Chapter 2153. Pacey High. As the leader of the four monarchs of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the Violet Dragon King naturally had her own pride. When she saw Pacey High ignoring her for a long time, her beautiful face that was hidden under the veil turned gloomy immediately. Pacey High regained his senses when he heard the Violet Dragon King's displeased voice. He looked at her. The two powerhouses who were ranked in the top 10 on the Supreme Saint ranking stared at each other. The Violet Dragon King's eyes were filled with anger, but Pacey High's eyes were as calm as ever. He was not affected by the Violet Dragon King's angry gaze. One of them was the direct disciple of the strongest powerhouse in the Tao Martial Saint land, who was ranked 7th on the Supreme Saint ranking, while the other was the leader of the four monarchs of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, who was ranked 10th on the Supreme Saint ranking. At this moment, the people present on the scene could clearly sense the tension between the two of them. Naturally, they could sense it as well. The tension mainly came from the Violet Dragon King's side. Lord Karmapa. The few elders from the Zhuangzi Buddhism became anxious when they saw this. They hurriedly transmitted their voices to the Violet Dragon King. This is Pacey High. He's ranked 7th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Please don't make an enemy of him. Lord Karmapa, I know you're strong, but Pacey High is not an ordinary person. If it's possible, it's best not to offend him. Lord Karmapa, you can only be friends with Pacey High. You can't make an enemy of him. When the few elders from the Zhuangzi Buddhism transmitted their voices were filled with dread. They were afraid of Pacey High's strength and Nye Wu Tian, the strongest powerhouse in the Tao Martial Saint land, behind him. It was unknown if the few elders from the Zhuangzi Buddhism had persuaded her, or if the Violet Dragon King had realized it was not wise to make an enemy out of Pacey High. Her gaze softened, and she was no longer as hostile as before. It's the Boundless Bell. Pacey High replied nonchalantly when the Violet Dragon King's gaze softened. At the same time, he glanced at the Boundless Bell in his hand and sighed inwardly. Although the Boundless Bell was still a Super Saint weapon, it was a damaged Super Saint weapon. If the Boundless Bell were to suffer the same attack as before, the Boundless Bell would definitely turn into a pile of fragments. Pacey High's voice was clearly heard by the Amethyst Dragon King and the others. Although his voice was not loud, it was like a bolt from the blue in their ears, causing them to be stunned. Is it really the Super Saint weapon of the 10 Great Saint weapon ranking, the Boundless Bell? After receiving Pacey High's confirmation, everyone's pupils shrank, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. The cracked little golden bell in Pacey High's hand was actually the defensive type Super Saint weapon. The Boundless Bell? One of the 10 Super Saint weapons on the 10 Great Saint weapons ranking? What kind of force is able to damage the Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell, to such an extent? This is unbelievable. It's said that only eminent celestials who have passed the heavenly tribulation are able to damage a Super Saint weapon. Since the Boundless Bell is damaged to such an extent, it means the force that attacked it isn't any weaker than an eminent celestial. Only an eminent celestial can damage a Super Saint weapon? If that's the case, doesn't that mean those who possess a defensive Super Saint weapon like the Boundless Bell, even if they're not even at the Saint Celestial stage, would be able to withstand the attack of an eminent celestial and remain unharmed? That's different. For example, if a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage possesses the Boundless Bell and uses it in a timely manner, he would be able to withstand the attack of an eminent celestial. At most, he would be able to withstand the attack of a powerhouse at the third form of the Saint Celestial stage or below, although a powerhouse at the third form of the Saint Celestial stage or above wouldn't be able to damage the Boundless Bell. Their strength would still be able to pass through the Boundless Bell and injure a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. That's true. Although the Boundless Bell is a defensive Super Saint weapon with a strong defense, in the hands of someone with a weak cultivation base, the Boundless Bell wouldn't be able to fully utilize its strength. At this moment, everyone was curious. What did Pacey High encounter after entering the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by an eminent celestial? How did he manage to injure his Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell? Many people could not help but feel chills running up their spines. This was especially true for those who were eliminated earlier. They were glad that they were eliminated. Otherwise, they would have most likely died in there. With Lord Pacey High's strength, and the Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell, I'm afraid an attack below the level of an eminent celestial wouldn't be able to threaten him. Only an eminent celestial, or above, would be able to injure him. That's true. Based on this, we can conclude that Lord Pacey High must have encountered an attack at the level of an eminent celestial after he entered the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by an eminent celestial. I wonder what happened to Lord Pacey High. All eyes were on Pacey High. They were curious about what happened to him in the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by an eminent celestial. Pacey High, what happened to you? Unlike the others who did not dare to ask Pacey High this question, the Violet Dragon King had no qualms about it. Moreover, she was curious as well, so she asked the question without hesitation. The Violet Dragon King added, "The Greenback King, one of the 4 kings of Zhuangzi Buddhism, has died in there not long ago. If you have any clues, please tell me. The Zhuangzi Buddhism will be indebted to you." The Greenback King died in there as well? Pacey High raised an eyebrow when he heard the Violet Dragon King's words. Then he shook his head and sighed. Greed is indeed an original sin. Without waiting for the Violet Dragon King's reply, Pacey High continued to say, "Earlier, I tore open the spatial barrier leading to the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by an eminent celestial. After I entered, I was attacked by a killing formation." A killing formation? The Violet Dragon King and the others did not think much of Pacey High's words. They thought it was just a prelude, and the main event was yet to come. However, when Pacey High continued to speak, they realized they were wrong. The energy released by the killing formation was terrifying. Pacey High's expression stiffened when he said this. A hint of fear could be seen in his eyes as he continued to say, "Even an eminent celestial's full-powered attack might not be as powerful. Fortunately, I have the Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell, that my master gave me. Otherwise, I would have died. However, even with the protection of the Boundless Bell, I didn't manage to save my left arm and the 1,000 inscriptions Saint Saber. The spatial ring I wore on my left hand was shrouded by that energy, and it was directly turned into powder. The 1,000 inscriptions Saint Saber was also turned into dust." The more Pacey High spoke, the more solemn his voice became. As Pacey High said this, the scene fell into a dead silence again. Silence. It was terrifyingly quiet. At this moment, even the Violet Dragon King, the leader of the Black Kshetra sect's 4 great kings, broke out in cold sweat. At the same time, he was relieved. Fortunately, Pacey High had come. Otherwise, if she had entered the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by an eminent celestial and encountered the same killing formation, she would definitely have died. She did not doubt this at all. After all, she was not as strong as Pacey High, and she did not have the Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell, to protect herself. However, even now, she still felt that Pacey High was exaggerating. However, she knew very well that Pacey High was not lying. There was no need for Pacey High to lie. Heavens! Such a powerful killing formation. Even an eminent celestial might not be able to set up such a powerful killing formation, right? That's right. According to Pacey High, the power of the killing formation was even stronger than the full-powered attack of an eminent celestial. I really don't know who set up such a killing array. That's ridiculous. When the others regained their senses, they were shocked by Pacey High's words. They did not doubt Pacey High's words at all. Even when Pacey High said the killing formation was stronger than the full-powered attack of an eminent celestial, they did not doubt his words at all. If it was someone else, they might have doubted it. However, it was impossible for them to doubt Pacey High. This was because Pacey High's master was the strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint Land, Nie Wu Tian. If Nie Wu Tian was still in the Dao Martial Saint Land, even if he was not an eminent celestial, he would be very close to becoming one. Therefore, with such a master, Pacey High must have a deep understanding of the strength of an eminent celestial. Otherwise, he would not have said such words. That killing formation. I'm afraid even an eminent celestial who specializes in formations might not be able to set it up, right? The Violet Dragon King asked as she looked at Pacey High. Naturally, one eminent celestial wouldn't be able to set it up, but what if there were 3 of them? 3? The Violet Dragon King's eyes widened as her heart trembled. The others were dumbfounded. Yes, Pacey High nodded. Then, a hint of dread could be seen on his face as he said, "When the killing formation attacked, I extended my divine consciousness to investigate it. It was a combination of 3 different energies. Although it was perfectly fused, I still managed to find some clues. If I'm not mistaken, that formation is most likely created by 3 eminent celestials." Chapter 2154. If I'm not mistaken, the Greenback King from Zhuangzi Buddhism isn't the only one who died in there. Even Meng Hao from Sin City is dead, Pacey High said in a deep voice. Meng Hao. The Violet Dragon King narrowed her eyes when she heard Pacey High's words. She realized she had guessed correctly. Meng Hao was in trouble just like Wei Suwa. Meng Hao. Lord Meng Hao is dead as well. Many sectless cultivators from Sin City regained their senses. They were shocked. Meng Hao, the aloof scholar, was a big shot in Sin City. He was also one of the guardians of Sin City. He was a powerful powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Apart from that, Meng Hao's ranking on the Supreme Saint ranking was even higher than Wei Suwa, the Greenback King from Zhuangzi Buddhism. He was ranked 21st on the Supreme Saint ranking. For this reason, everyone was shocked when they found out he had died in there. You came for Meng Hao. It seems like you have a special relationship with him. The Violet Dragon King sighed and comforted Pacey High. My condolences. I only know about Meng Hao, but I don't know him. Pacey High shook his head. His words stunned the Violet Dragon King. The others present on the scene were puzzled as well. If Pacey High did not know Meng Hao, why did he ask about Meng Hao's whereabouts? I came to look for Meng Hao because my senior brother must have heard about it from Meng Hao and entered the void dimension. Pacey High said in a deep voice as he looked at the tear in the void that he had torn open. Everyone was confused by his words. The moment Pacey High's words left his mouth, the entire place fell silent. Could Pacey High's senior brother be another disciple of Nie Wu Tian, the strongest powerhouse in the Dao Martial Saint Land? Pacey High was Nie Wu Tian's only disciple, right? Why would Pacey High mention a senior brother? Of course, there were also people who guessed that the senior brother Pacey High was talking about had nothing to do with Nie Wu Tian. Perhaps the senior brother Pacey High was referring to was a senior brother from a sect he had joined before, or a disciple of a master or teacher he had joined before. That was why he still called him senior brother. For a moment, the people present were whispering again. My senior brother is also the direct disciple of my master, Nie Wu Tian. Pacey High said again, denying most people's guesses. He confirmed that the senior brother he mentioned was also the direct disciple of the strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint Land, Nie Wu Tian. When his senior brother was alive, he felt that he had failed to live up to his master's expectations, so he didn't dare to reveal his identity as Nie Wu Tian's direct disciple. Now that his senior brother was dead, he wanted everyone to know of his senior brother's identity. Senior Nie Wu Tian, in addition to Lord Pacey High, you actually accepted another personal disciple? I've never heard of Senior Nie Wu Tian accepting another disciple. To be able to be accepted as a disciple by Senior Nie Wu Tian, he must also be an extremely talented expert. After receiving Pacey High's confirmation, a commotion broke out again. The topic of discussion changed as well. Many people were curious about Pacey High's senior brother. My senior brother is Sin City's Bai Li. While everyone, including the Amethyst Dragon King, was curious about Pacey High's senior brother, Pacey High spoke in a timely manner. As soon as his words were spoken, the entire place fell into a deathly silence. Bai Li. Everyone present on the scene was familiar with this name. Bai Li was one of the 2 strongest guardians in Sin City. His cultivation base was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and he was ranked 9th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Boom. As soon as the sound of wind breaking rang in the air, a terrifying explosion rang in the air. Everyone only felt a vast and terrifying gale whistling down from the sky, pressuring them to the point that they couldn't breathe. Chapter 2156. The palm print that was the size of a small mountain fell with a whistling sound, as though it contained a peerless force. Boom, 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 boom. The air trembled in the wake of the palm print, as the sound of air exploding reverberated in the air one after another. It was as though there were thunderclaps in the air. When the palm print fell, it seemed as though it blotted out the sky like a black cloud. Bang, 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 bang. As the palm print whizzed down, a series of popping sounds rang out. The people from the various factions who had yet to leave Zhong Chen's vicinity were unable to dodge in time. One by one, they exploded into a bloody mist that filled the sky. The bloody mist fluttered in the air like red roses that were dazzling to the eyes. In just a blink of an eye, more than 10 Saint Celestial stage powerhouses from various forces in the Dao Martial Saint Land died, without a complete corpse. Some of these Saint Celestial stage powerhouses were at the 4th or 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, none of them could resist the palm print that descended from the sky. Moreover, they did not even have time to dodge the palm print. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. When the Saint Celestial stage powerhouses in the surroundings exploded into a mist of blood, the 1,000 inscriptions Saint Sword on Zhong Chen's back also left its scabbard in a timely manner. Moreover, it whistled as it flew out and formed a dense sword net above his head. The sword net hung in the sky as it emitted a sharp sword chi that was filled with a destructive aura. It was as though it could burn and destroy everything. Zhong Chen's black robe billowed as his handsome and devilish face tensed up. The saint origin in his body surged out without any reservation as he cast the defensive martial tactic and defensive divine ability he had mastered. Heaven and Earth Sword. Previously, he had relied on this technique to forcefully withstand a full-force attack from a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and only suffered a minor injury. However, he had exhausted more than half of his saint origin because of this. Rumble. A thunderous sound swept out. It was the sound of the palm print that was like a cloud that covered the sky. After it killed more than 10 Saint Celestial stage powerhouses, it landed on the sword net above Zhong Chen's head. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, a series of thunderous booms rang out one after another. The palm print landed on the sword net, and the unstoppable force continued to destroy the defense of the sword net. Under the bombardment of these forces, the sword net continued to dim. Not good. Just as Zhong Chen seemed to have sensed something, and his expression changed drastically, the palm print finally destroyed the sword net and landed on his body. Although the net of swords had drained most of the palm print's power, the remaining power was still boundless. It landed on Zhong Chen and slammed him into the huge valley. Boom, rumble, accompanied by a series of earth-shattering noises. The entire valley seemed to be trembling, as if an earthquake had occurred. At the same time, the power of the palm print was finally exhausted. Hiss, 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 hiss. At this moment, the group of people including Chang'e Kai finally regained their senses. When they regained their senses, they gasped again. He did not even show himself, but he had killed more than 10 Saint Celestial stage powerhouses with just a palm print. Even the black-clad swordsman, Zhong Chen, who was ranked 27th on the Supreme Saint ranking and was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, was as weak as a chicken in front of him. They knew very well that Zhong Chen was not weak at all. Even if Zhong Chen did not die from the palm print, he would be severely injured. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, causing Chang'e Kai and the others to tremble. In the next moment, a person appeared in front of them. This was an old man shrouded in a black robe. He was tall and sturdy, with a strong back and a bare waist. Although his appearance was very ordinary, his eyes gave people a very sharp feeling. Ever since he appeared, he had been standing there, unmoving like a mountain, like a statue. This is Chang'e Kai, who had sharp eyes, noticed a blood-red skull embroidered on the chest of the old man's robe. His eyes widened immediately, and his body began to tremble. It was as though he had encountered something terrifying. Grand Priest. Just as the others were looking at the old man with fear, a respectful and somewhat dispirited voice sounded. It was Zhong Chun who was slammed into the valley by the palm print. He was in a wretched state as he rose into the air. Currently, Zhong Chun no longer looked as valiant as before. He was covered in dust. After rising into the air, Zhong Chun looked at the old man with a hint of fear in his eyes. You actually came here personally. When facing the old man, Zhong Chun also used the honorific title. Even if the old man had severely injured him, he did not dare to be disrespectful in front of the old man. Since you're able to withstand my palm print, I'll spare your life today. However, in the face of Zhong Chun's respectful greeting, the old man whom Zhong Chun addressed as the Grand Priest did not even look at Zhong Chun. After a cold snort, he also flew out. Thank you, Grand Priest. Zhong Chun sighed in relief when he heard this. If the old man wanted to kill him, he would not be able to fight back, even if his cultivation base was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Soon after, the old man arrived near Cheng Yikai. Cheng Yikai hurriedly moved aside when he saw this. He was afraid the old man would be displeased if he blocked his path. Even he was afraid of the old man's strength. Grand Priest. It's really him. Cheng Yikai's heart jolted when he heard Zhong Chun addressing the old man respectfully. He realized his earlier guess was right. This old man was the Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect. He was also the strongest person in Heaven Divination Sect. The Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect had a cultivation base at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. His ranking on the Supreme Saint ranking was only below Nie Wu Tian, the strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint land, and another person. He was ranked 3rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was one of the strongest people in the Dao Martial Saint land. Buzz! A sound that sounded like the sound of a saber rang in the air. Cheng Yikai and Zhong Chun only saw a flash before their eyes. The old man casually waved his hand and slashed with his palm, leaving behind an extremely ferocious crack in the void. It was as though a hole had been torn open out of thin air. Then, he moved his body and disappeared into the crack in the void. He went in. The group of people outside were all dumbstruck when they saw this. They were all shocked by the old man's actions. At the same time, a few people who were sober regained their senses and muttered, "Did Lord Zhong Chun just call that old senior the Grand Priest?" The Grand Priest is a rare title in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land, right? Zhong Chun used to be a member of Heaven Divination Sect, and that lord is so powerful. Don't tell me that lord is Mo Xian, the Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect. Lord Mo Xian. It should be him. Apart from him, I can't think of anyone else who can kill more than 10 Saint Celestial stage powerhouses and heavily injure a powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, who's ranked at the 27th place on the Supreme Saint ranking. Mo Xian, the Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect, the strongest person in Heaven Divination Sect. He's ranked 3rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. He's one of the strongest powerhouses in the Dao Martial Saint land. Strongest Powerhouses was the title given to powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint land. Only powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage or above were worthy of this title. After guessing the old man's identity, the people present on the scene were shocked and curious. He wondered if the High Priest of the Heaven Divination Sect would be able to survive after entering the trap left behind by the 3 eminent celestials. Rumor had it that the power of the killing formation in the trap had even cracked the boundless bell and crippled one of Pei Si Hai's arms, who was protected by the boundless bell. I wonder if Lord Mo Xian will be able to return safely. Of course, not only is Lord Mo Xian the Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect, but he's also the only person in Heaven Divination Sect who has mastered the sect's most treasured defensive divine ability. The Heaven Divination Sect's most treasured defensive divine ability is an ancient divine ability. It's widely acknowledged as the strongest defensive divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint land. With that divine ability, the Grand Priest's defense is probably not inferior to Pei Si Hai, who possesses the boundless bell. The crowd whispered among themselves. Most of them were confident in Mo Xian, the Grand Priest of Heaven Divination Sect. Even Cheng Yikai and Zhong Chun were curious about Emo Xian. Would Emo Xian be able to return alive? In the Debussy subterranean, in a mountain range that was originally extremely quiet, a series of thunderous shouts suddenly rang out. Suli, wake up! Wake up! Wake up! I'm your master! Take a closer look. I'm your master, Sword 13. Not only were those shouts very loud, but they were also filled with deep anxiety. Amidst the anxiety, there was also a deep sense of powerlessness. Whoosh! Whoosh! The speed of the person at the back was much faster than the person at the front. In just a blink of an eye, the person at the back had caught up to the person at the front. The person at the front was a middle-aged man. He looked wretched, as though he had just gone through some ordeal. The person behind him was an extraordinarily handsome young man with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He should have been a gentleman, but now, his entire body was emitting waves of monstrous devil chi. Moreover, the devil chi was extremely pure. This kind of demonic aura was not something an ordinary demonic cultivator could possess. Apart from that, the young man's eyes were bloodshot. They were cold and emotionless. Whoosh! Chapter 2157. Duan Lingtian was not here, so he did not see the scene of the young man attacking the middle-aged man. Otherwise, he would have been shocked. This was because not only did he know these two people, but he also knew they were master and disciple. The young man with devil chi on his body was like a devil god. His name was Suli, and he was a good friend of Duan Lingtian. Until today, Duan Lingtian still remembered the past between him and Suli clearly. The first time he met Suli was in the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Iron Blood City's Genius Camp. At that time, they were only in their teens. Later on, both of them passed the Genius Camp's assessment and entered the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Paladin Academy. It was also at that time that the Su clan in the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City wanted to kill him. They even threatened Su Li with the lives of Su Li's family members to make Su Li cooperate with them. However, Su Li remembered their friendship and did not want to harm Duan Lingtian. In the end, he did not choose to help Duan Lingtian. After leaving a letter for Duan Lingtian, Su Li left the Imperial City. It could be said that Su Li had ruined his own great future. At least, that was how Duan Lingtian saw it. It was also at that moment that he took Su Li as his best friend. Later on, he met Su Li during the Genius competition, held by the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. After the Genius competition in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he and Su Li obtained the qualification to participate in the Dark Han Dynasty's martial competition in the Darkstone Empire. Both of them shone brightly in the martial competition and obtained the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. During this process, the friendship between the two of them became even stronger. It was indestructible. After the martial competition of the 10 dynasties ended, many things happened. First, he had a conflict with the Blade sect that Su Li was in. When he went to look for Su Li, he discovered that Su Li had already left the Blade sect with his master. It was also at that time that he did not see Su Li again. On the other hand, Su Li's master was called Sword 13, and he was precisely the middle-aged man that was being pursued by Su Li now. Jian Shursan was the former second strongest person in the Blade sect. Later on, because he was unable to accept what the Blade sect had done to Duan Lingtian, he left the Blade sect with Su Li in a disheartened state and wandered the world ever since. When Su Li moved his hand that was holding the sword, the sound of the sword whistling was short-lived. Puchi! A soft sound rang out, and Jian Shursan's body trembled violently for a moment before he stopped moving. Following which, he groaned and turned around with difficulty to look at Su Li, who had caught up with him. At this moment, an extremely fine bloody crack appeared on his throat. The cracks continued to spread and finally turned into a hideous and terrifying sword mark. Fatal sword mark. You're called Su Li, you're a human. Human. No, not a demon. At the same time that blood splattered from his throat, Jian Shursan used the last of his strength to speak to Su Li, who had a cold expression and a bloody light in his eyes. Before he could finish his words, he closed his eyes and collapsed. The strange thing was, when he died, a wisp of a gratified smile actually appeared on the corners of his mouth. It was as if he had died with a satisfied smile on his face. Before today, Jian Shursen might have never dreamed that he had dominated for half of his life. Yet in the end, he would actually die in the hands of his personal disciple, Su Li. Of course, from the expression he revealed the moment before he died, it could be seen that he didn't blame Su Li. Before he died, not only did he not have the intention to blame Su Li, he even left this world with a gratified smile. His gratification could only come from Su Li, the disciple that he had depended on for many years. As for what he was gratified about, perhaps only he knew. I am called Su Li. I am a human? Just as Jian Shursen closed his eyes and collapsed with a gratified smile on his face, Su Li seemed to have been touched, and the bloody light in his eyes dimmed a lot in an instant. After that, he held his head with both hands, and his face was distorted and hideous as he muttered to himself without end. It was as if he was enduring some inhuman torture. Along with the passage of time, Su Li's face was distorted to the extreme, and he clenched his teeth to the point they bled. The bloody light in his eyes finally vanished completely. After the bloody light in his eyes vanished completely, the pure devil chi that rose explosively and raged on his body was restrained as well. It was as if he'd become a different person in an instant, and he'd once again returned to that elegant young genius. Master! Suddenly, Su Li let out a painful and sorrowful cry, and then he descended from the sky and descended to the side of Jian Shursen's corpse before kneeling on the ground. His body trembled violently because of the boundless pain that arose in his heart, and 2 streams of clear tears flowed down his face. He was able to faintly perceive what had happened earlier, but at that time, his emotions were mostly controlled by the pure and violent devil chi, and it was difficult for him to control himself. So he could only watch helplessly as his master was killed by him. After he heard the last intermittent words his master spoke, he erupted madly and struggled with all his might. In the end, he exerted all his strength, and was finally able to temporarily suppress the devil chi, and temporarily recover his mind. Master, wait for disciple before the gates of hell. Disciple will come to accompany you right now. He faintly perceived that the pure and violent devil chi was about to break through its restraints and control his emotions and mind. Su Li didn't hesitate in the slightest. With a raise of his hand, the sword in his hand flashed out like a bolt of lightning. Swish! The sword left no trace as it pierced back, and with a poochie sound, it pierced into his own heart and pierced through his body. Under such circumstances, the scene of blood gushing out like a waterfall should have appeared. However, the scene of blood gushing out like a waterfall didn't appear. Instead, an extremely strange scene appeared. Even though Su Li had pierced his own heart with the bell sword, and pierced through his body. However, not a trace of blood flowed out from his body, as if this sword had pierced through empty air. In reality, this sword had indeed pierced through his heart and body. However, Su Li didn't feel any pain. Just when Su Li was shocked to the point his pupils constricted, and his face revealed disbelief. Boom! The devil chi that soared into the sky swept out from his body again. The pure devil chi made him look like one of the devil clans in the land of exile. When the devil chi soared into the sky, his eyes were once again shrouded by a layer of bloody light. Poochie! Another soft sound rang in the air. It was as though Su Li had transformed into a completely different person. He had directly pulled out the sword that pierced his body and heart. When the sword was pulled out, not only did it not splatter blood, but it did not even leave a mark on Su Li's body. And that sword hole also closed up the instant the sword was pulled out, as if it had never appeared in the first place. The current Su Li was simply like an undying fiend god. Bang! As the devil chi on his body soared into the sky, Su Li, whose eyes were glowing with bloody light, stomped on the ground and soared into the sky. A wave of boundless energy, that was mixed with the domineering devil chi, exploded under his feet like a cannonball. Not only was the place where he stood earlier blasted into smithereens, but it also formed a huge pit and a huge spider web. Even Sword 13's corpse was blasted into powder. At the same time, Su Li soared into the sky and disappeared in just a blink of an eye. All of this happened in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. To be more precise, It happened in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, where the devil clans wreaked havoc. Duan Lingtian, who was in the pseudo-realm created by 3 eminent celestials adjacent to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, was unaware of what had happened to his good friend Su Li. Otherwise, he would have been very worried. After all, Su Li was his best friend. Not only was Duan Lingtian unaware of what had happened to Su Li, but he was also unaware that Su Li had become like this because he had obtained the legacy left behind by the 3 eminent devils who had created the pseudo-realm he was in. The pseudo-realm that the 3 eminent celestials had left behind in the upper province was only a trap. It did not contain their inheritance or the treasures they had collected throughout their lives. They had left their inheritance and treasures behind in the mortal continent, where they had stayed for a long time. The mortal continent was Duan Lingtian's hometown, Cloud Continent. The inheritance they left behind was obtained by Su Li, which caused Su Li's temperament to change greatly, turning him into a demon with a single thought. As for the treasures they had left behind, the most precious one was the Super Saint weapon. It was the 3-foot-long sword in Su Li's hand, the Traceless Sword. The Traceless Sword was one of the 10 great Super Saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking. It was also one of the only 2 10,000 inscriptions saint swords in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Outside the pseudo-realm where Duan Lingtian was, a tall and sturdy figure appeared out of thin air in front of the tear in the void that was slowly closing. It was an old man who was almost naked. His entire body was covered with hideous wounds. Without exception, all of these wounds were lacerated. It was a terrifying sight. Huff, 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 huff. After the old man came out of the pseudo-realm, apart from his weak aura, he was also panting heavily, as though he had exhausted all his strength. Although there were many people standing nearby, when they saw the appearance of the old man who appeared out of thin air, they couldn't help but inhale a breath of cold air. Then, they fell into a deathly silence. No one spoke for a long time. Heavens! What did they just see? The great oracle of the Heaven Divination sect, Emotian, was a peerless powerhouse who was ranked 3rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. How could he be so severely injured after coming out of the independent space that was suspected to be created by 3 eminent celestials? After all, with the help of the number 1 defensive divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land, the Heaven Divination sect's guarding divine ability, that Emotian had comprehended to its peak. Chapter 2158. Even the current 7-clawed divine dragon's defense was not as good as Emotian's. Naturally, all of this was not just because Emotian had comprehended the number 1 defensive divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land to its peak. Part of the reason was that he was not a human to begin with. To be more precise, he was not human. His true form was the Super Saint Beast, the red-armored wild boar king. It was a Super Saint Beast whose physical defense was not inferior to the 7-clawed divine dragons. Apart from that, one could also see that Emotian's body was covered in wounds. Although Emotian's body was covered in wounds, they were healing at an extremely fast speed. In just a few dozen breaths, the wounds had already healed by a large margin. This was another characteristic of the Super Saint Beast, the red-armored wild boar king. Strong recovery ability, strong resilience and strong recovery ability. This made the red-armored wild boar king one of the strongest Super Saint Beasts in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Moreover, he had comprehended the number 1 defensive divine ability in the Dao Martial Saint Land to its peak. Even the current strongest person in the Dao Martial Saint Land, Wu Tian, would not be able to compare to him in terms of defense without the help of a defensive Super Saint weapon. Currently, such a person had become like this after entering the independent space that was suspected to be created by 3 eminent celestials. It seems like Pei Si Hai was not exaggerating. Among the people present on the scene, the white-clad swordsman, Chung Yi Kai, and the black-clad swordsman, Zhong Chun, were the first to regain their senses. They were glad they did not enter the independent space. Otherwise, they would have died. Whoosh! After most of his wounds had healed, Emotian raised his hand and took out a new set of black robes to wear. Then he looked at Zhong Chun intently. Zhong Chun shuddered in fear when he saw Emotian's gaze. In the end, Mo Xian did not say anything and disappeared before everyone's eyes in just a flash. Among the people present on the scene, only Cheng Yikai and Zhong Chun could vaguely see the old man's swift movements. In just a blink of an eye, he had disappeared from their sight. Only after Mo Xian left did the others come back to their senses. When they regained their senses, they could not help but feel shocked. At the same time, they spread the news to the entire upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. It's suspected to be a trap left behind by 3 eminent celestials. After crippling one of the arms of Pei Si Hai, who's ranked 7th on the Supreme Saint ranking, it severely injured Mo Xian, who's ranked 3rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. Oh my god, is this true? Although Lord Mo Xian did not possess a defensive Super Saint weapon, his defense was definitely not inferior to Pei Si Hai's defensive Super Saint weapon, the Boundless Bell. Even he was severely injured when he barged into that independent space. Wouldn't the others die without a doubt? It's true. At that time many people saw it. I want to know who those 3 eminent celestials are. How could they leave behind such a damned place? Isn't it obvious that they're trying to scam us? At this moment, the people from the various sects in the Dao Martial Saint Land finally realized how terrifying the trap that was suspected to be left behind by eminent celestials was. Prior to this, although the sectless cultivators had regarded that place as a forbidden area, some of the people from the various forces did not agree with it. They thought the sectless cultivators had deliberately spread false news to monopolize the inheritance and treasures left behind by the eminent celestials. However, it seemed like the sectless cultivators were not exaggerating. For a time, the pseudo-realm that Duan Lingtian was in that was created by 3 eminent celestials had become a forbidden area in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Duan Lingtian, who was in the pseudo-realm, was naturally unaware of this. At the peak of a snow-capped mountain in the northern region, an old man dressed in a long gray robe stood at the peak of the snow-capped mountain. He was lost in thought as he looked in the direction of the central region. Snowflakes continued to fall. However, when they approached the old man, they seemed to be dispelled by an invisible force. It was as though the old man had some sort of magical power. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, causing the falling snow to flutter in the air. A figure appeared behind the old man. It was a beautiful woman. In the past, I thought the mission of the 7 Absolute Successor was to seek revenge from the 3 great sects and suppress them until they couldn't lift their heads. The old man did not raise his head when the beautiful woman appeared. However, no one knew if he was talking to himself or the beautiful woman. However, it seems like the 7 Absolute Sect won't be able to suppress the 3 great sects in the future. It's not impossible for them to annihilate the 3 great sects and destroy the foundations of the 3 great sects. The old man continued to say, based on what you said. At the same time, the beautiful woman asked again, is it because of the 3 girls' innate spiritual roots that have transformed into violet innate spiritual roots? Yes. The old man nodded. Previously, I thought only the girl from the Blazing Phoenix progeny had a chance of transforming her innate spiritual root into a violet innate spiritual root. I didn't expect the other 2 girls would also have violet innate spiritual roots. This is, naturally, a pleasant surprise for the 7 Absolute Sect. However, when I think about it, if they grow stronger in the future, with the help of the successor of the Fog Rain progeny, the first Absolute, whom even I can't predict, it won't be difficult for them to annihilate the 3 great sects, right? The old man said. Based on the old man's words, one could tell he was the successor of the 9 Absolute Sect. He was none other than the former successor of the Prophet progeny, the second Absolute of the 7 Absolute Sect, the Oracle Man. As for the beautiful woman, she was the former successor of the Red Dust progeny, the 7th Absolute of the 7 Absolute Sect. She was also the master of the current successor of the Red Dust progeny, Han Xuanai. Old Prophet, don't you think you've underestimated the 3 great sects? The beautiful woman shook her head and said, at that time, our 7 Absolute Sects ancestor, the former successor of the Fog Rain progeny, was the Sword Saint Feng Qingyang. At that time, he was invincible in the entire Dao Martial Saint Land. However, the three great sects were not annihilated in his era. Don't tell me you think the current successor of the seven absolutes is stronger than the successor of the seven absolutes in his era? The moment the beautiful woman's words left her mouth, the oracle man fell silent. Of course, it might be because the sword saint ancestor is merciful. However, nothing is absolute. Perhaps, the three great sects have some trump cards that we don't know about? The beautiful woman added. You have a point. The oracle man nodded in agreement with the beautiful woman's words. However, according to my divination, I'm afraid the seven absolute sects' biggest enemy isn't the three great sects. The oracle man's expression turned solemn when he reached this part of his sentence. You mean, the devil clans from the land of exile? The beautiful woman asked as she narrowed her eyes. Yes, the oracle man nodded solemnly. The devil clans. Have they really returned? Even though she had not experienced the previous human-devil era, she knew how terrifying the devil clan was according to the notes left behind by the red dust progeny, the beautiful woman. During the human-devil era, the Dao Martial Saint land was not divided into the upper province and lower province. At that time, the Dao Martial Saint land was filled with devils. It was comparable to hell on earth. It's very likely that they've already returned. Currently, I can't predict the fate of the Debussy subterranean at all. The oracle man sighed. Let alone the three little fellows. I can't even predict the fate of the mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, Duan Ruffing, and the people around him. It's as though there's an invisible wall that's preventing me from predicting their fates. The beautiful woman fell silent when she heard this. After a long while she finally spoke again. There was a hint of doubt in her voice. If the devil clans really returned, would they have enough time to grow up? I don't know. The elder of heavenly secrets shook his head and said this sentence that he had almost never said before. Zoroastrianism in the Western region. The Four Symbols Sanctums was where the saint land of Zoroastrianism was located. At this moment, the saint land of Zoroastrianism was suddenly shrouded by a domineering and invincible aura. This aura came from the clouds in the sky above the saint land. As soon as it appeared, it swept through the entire saint land. The first place to be affected was the Saint Island, where most people were gathered. On the Saint Island, some of the Saint Land's elite disciples with a weaker cultivation base could not help but tremble in fear when they sensed the domineering and invincible aura. At this moment, they were like little animals in the forest who suddenly saw the king of all beasts, a tiger. Fear rose in their hearts immediately. What a terrifying aura! Whose aura is this? Many true disciples and bronze flame elders were frightened when they sensed the aura. All of them had a horrified expression on their faces. This aura, could it be? Many silver flame elders seemed to have sensed something. Their eyes lit up immediately as excitement appeared on their faces. At the same time, a figure flew out from the Azure Dragon Sanctum, White Tiger Sanctum, Vermilion Bird Sanctum, and Black Turtle Sanctum of the Four Symbols Sanctums. To be more precise, they were flying toward a certain place behind the clouds in the sky above the Saint Land. A few figures also flew out from the mines in the Four Symbols Sanctums. They were all flying in the same direction. In the enforcement hall on the Saint Island, in a quiet valley, there was a very ordinary-looking small courtyard. A slovenly old man who was lying leisurely on a deck chair and basking in the sun narrowed his eyes when he sensed the domineering and invincible aura. Lord Sect Leader has made a breakthrough. Chapter 2159. Behind the clouds above the main island of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, islands could be seen floating in the air. They were located on 4 different levels. There was only one floating island at the highest point. There were 5 floating islands at the bottom. There were 10 floating islands at the bottom. There were 50 floating islands at the bottom. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As the sound of wind whistling reverberated in the air, figures from all directions gathered near the floating island at the highest point. Then they came to a halt in unison. Those who did not know better would think they had rehearsed this beforehand. Lu Tai, the sanctum leader of Azure Dragon Sanctum, was among these people. Apart from Lu Tai, the sanctum leader of Azure Dragon Sanctum, the sanctum leader of Vermilion Bird Sanctum, the sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum, and the sanctum leader of Black Turtle Sanctum were present as well. Apart from them, there were a few other Golden Flame elders from Zoroastrianism who were present as well. Even Dong Yuanjin, the Vice Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, and a few other Hall Masters of the Enforcement Hall were present. Apart from them, there were two unfamiliar faces. They were the two vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. Both of them were at the sixth form of the Saint Celestial stage. In terms of strength, they were much stronger than Lu Tai, Dong Yuanjin and the others. At the same time, Lu Tai, Dong Yuanjin, and the others took the initiative to greet the two vice sect leaders. After all, they were the vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. In terms of status and strength, they were superior to them. For this reason, they did not dare to be rude. While the two vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism were greeting Lu Tai, Dong Yuanjin, and the others with a smile on their faces. "What's the commotion?" An old and lazy voice sounded. Then, under the watchful eyes of the others, a sloppy old man appeared in front of them. The old man was dressed in a sloppy robe. He did not care about his appearance, making him look like an old beggar. However, it was precisely this old man who looked like an old beggar that caused the usually arrogant Vice Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, Dong Yuanjin, to immediately bow and greet him. "Lord Hall Master! Lord Hall Master!" The other Vice Hall Masters of the Law Enforcement Hall also hurriedly bowed. As they bowed, the unkempt old man's identity was revealed. The Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, Ice Eagle. "Greetings, Hall Master Lung. Hall Master Lung." After Dong Yuanjin and the other Vice Hall Masters of the Enforcement Hall, the four symbols Sanctum 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 Masters, and the other Golden Flame Elders, also bowed respectfully to the unkempt old man. Even the two vice leaders of Zoroastrianism took the initiative to greet the sloppy old man with a smile on their faces. Although the Enforcement Hall Master's cultivation base was at the sixth form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Enforcement Hall Master's cultivation base was the same as theirs. However, in terms of strength, even if the two of them joined forces, they might not be able to defeat the other party. His opponent was someone who was close to breaking through to the seventh form of the Saint Celestial stage. The Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, Lung Ying, was about to respond to the greetings from the crowd. However, before he could open his mouth, he seemed to have noticed something and turned his head abruptly to look into the distance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As though 3 gusts of wind had blown past, 3 figures appeared near the crowd. After revealing themselves, the 3 of them also revealed their true identities. One of them was an old man dressed in green, the other was a young man dressed in purple, and the last one was a beautiful woman dressed in red. The old man had white hair and looked sage-like, as if he was an immortal. The young man was handsome and had a graceful bearing. He gave off a refreshing feeling. The beautiful woman was extremely beautiful. Her graceful figure and beautiful face were enough to make one's imagination run wild. Naturally, none of the people present on the scene dared to disrespect the red-clad beautiful woman. When they saw the green-clad old man, the purple-clad young man, and the beautiful woman dressed in red, their expressions were tense and solemn. They were no longer as casual as before. It was as though the 3 people in front of them were ferocious beasts. Lung Ying, the Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, was the only one who reacted better. After he regained his senses, he said to the 3 people with a smile on his face, "What a good day to be able to meet the 3 guardians." As soon as Lung Ying finished speaking, it was obvious who the 3 people were. They were the 3 great guardians of Zoroastrianism, who were second only to the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. The 3 great guardians of Zoroastrianism were also known as the 3 guardians of wind, fire, and cloud. They were respectively Zifeng, Qinghua, and Hongyan. This ranking was based on the strength of the 3 of them. The strongest among them was Guardian Zifeng. He was a handsome young man dressed in purple. His cultivation base was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He was one of the pillars of Zoroastrianism. The second strongest was Guardian Qinghua. He was Gan Ruyan's master. His cultivation base was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He could be considered as one of the strongest people in the Dao Martial Saint Land. He was ranked in the top 20 on the Supreme Saint ranking. Finally, there was Guardian Hong Yun. Although she was a woman, her cultivation base was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. She was one of the few female powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Greetings, Guardian Zifeng, Guardian Qinghua and Guardian Hong Yun. At the same time, the two vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism took the lead and bowed respectfully to Zifeng, Qinghua, and Hong Yun. Zifeng and the other two vice sect leaders nodded slightly before they shifted their attention to the floating island. This floating island was also the highest floating island in front of everyone's eyes. It was like an emperor standing in the best place, overlooking all living things and looking down on heaven and earth. At this moment, a domineering and invincible aura could be felt coming from the vast mansion on the floating island. Facing this aura, even some of the weaker golden flame elders felt pressured. The 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. It's the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Qinghua, one of the 3 great guardians of the fire worship sect, cried out in surprise. A hint of excitement could be heard in his voice. The 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Lord Sect Leader has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Apart from the 2 guardians of Zoroastrianism and Hall Master Lung Ying, the Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall, the others were shocked when they heard Qinghua's words. It did not cross their minds. The sect leader of Zoroastrianism had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage during his closed-door cultivation. The 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was the highest cultivation stage for humans and saint beasts in the Dao Martial Saint Land. This cultivation level was also known as the Immortal Ascension Transformation. Anyone whose cultivation base had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form, would be able to attract the heaven and earth tribulation. As long as one passed the tribulation, one would have the opportunity to ascend. After ascending to the heaven ascension, one would be able to ascend to a higher level, the Devata realm, and become a true celestial. The Zoroastrianism is going to have a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After they regained their senses, the people led by the 2 vice sect leaders of fire worship sect had an expression of joy on their faces. One should know that, before today, among the 3 great sects in the Dao Martial Saint Land, only the Zoroastrianism did not have a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. This had always been a worry for the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism. Now that they knew the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, this worry was lifted. In their opinion, this was the best news for them. This news was more effective than any medicine. A domineering and invincible aura continued to emanate from the floating island in front of them, as though it would never stop. Meanwhile, on the Saint Island, under the clouds under the feet of the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism, a group of Saint Land disciples was in a panic. It was as though the end of the world had arrived. Although the disciples of the 4 symbols sanctums had also sensed the aura, they did not feel much pressure since they were far away. Even so, they were still very curious. What's this aura? It's so domineering. It's as though it's invincible. I don't know. I think it's coming from the Saint Land. Similar conversations could be heard everywhere in the 4 symbols sanctums. The Saint Land disciples were in a panic, while the disciples of the 4 symbols sanctums were still in a daze. A loud voice rang in everyone's ears on the Zoroastrianism island as though it was magical. Let me tell everyone a piece of good news. Lord Sect Leader of Zoroastrianism has successfully broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form. The voice rang in everyone's ears on the Zoroastrianism island. The content of the words was like a bolt from the blue. The group of Zoroastrianism elders and disciples were stunned for a long time. In the end, the group of Zoroastrianism elders were the first to regain their senses. All of them had an excited expression on their faces. Lord Sect Leader has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Lord Sect Leader has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form. The group of fire worship sect's disciples who regained their senses felt excited after they regained their senses. Since their sect leader of Zoroastrianism had become stronger, it meant their Zoroastrianism had become stronger as well. To the disciples of the fire worship sect, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. After about 15 minutes, the domineering and invincible aura finally disappeared. The group of elite disciples in the Saint Land sighed in relief. Although they knew the aura came from their sect leader of Zoroastrianism, they were mentally prepared. However, they still felt the pressure from the aura. It was a pressure that came from their souls. Whoosh! At the same time, on the highest floating island behind the clouds above the Saint Island, a tall and burly figure appeared out of thin air. Lord Sect Leader. Chapter 2160. The sect leader of Zoroastrianism was a tall and burly middle-aged man. He wore a long white robe with red flames embroidered on it. It was similar to the robes worn by the elders and disciples of Zoroastrianism. Naturally, it was only similar because the flames embroidered on his white robe were unique. If one took a closer look, they would find that the flames embroidered on the sect leader of fire worship sect's robe seemed to form a long divine dragon that circled around his body. It was as though the true dragon was protecting him. Although the sect leader of Zoroastrianism was tall and burly, he did not look boorish at all. Regardless of whether it was her figure or her face, every part was just right, almost perfect. There was a sense of majesty between his brows, as though he could make all living things submit to him. It seems like I've caused quite a commotion this time. Even the three guardians and Hall Master Lung are here. The sect leader of Zoroastrianism smiled faintly as he leaned forward. In just a blink of an eye, a vast and powerful invisible energy swept out toward the people who were bowing at him. However, it did not injure the crowd. When it approached the crowd, it turned into a gentle yet powerful formless energy that lifted them up. Is this the strength of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Everyone was shocked. Congratulations, Lord Sect Leader, for breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form. In the end, Zifeng, Qing Xian, and Hong Yun were the first to regain their senses. They immediately congratulated the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Lung Ying and the others regained their senses when they heard the three guardians' words. Congratulations, Lord Sect Leader. Lung Ying and the others immediately congratulated the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. The sect leader of Zoroastrianism was called Tang Xian. Previously, when his cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he was already the strongest person in Zoroastrianism. He was widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint Land. Before this, he was ranked 4th on the Supreme Saint ranking. There were 3 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in front of him. Today, he who had been in closed-door cultivation for a long time finally came out. His cultivation base had successfully broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form. He had officially become one of the strongest powerhouses in the Tao Martial Saint Land. Tang Xian nodded at the leaders of the Zoroastrianism with a smile, then asked, "Did anything happen in the sect while I was in seclusion?" Sect leader. The moment Tang Xian's words left his mouth, one of the vice hall masters of the enforcement hall stepped forward and said with a solemn expression on his face, "The missing saintess of our Zoroastrianism has returned to our sect." The vice hall master of the enforcement hall was none other than Jiang Qin, the vice hall master of the enforcement hall who had sent Kerr and her mother to the enforcement hall. The missing saintess? Hearing Jiang Qin's words, Tang Xian was stunned for a moment. Then ecstasy appeared on his face. He lost his composure and asked excitedly, "Is that true?" Tang Xian's loss of composure and agitation frightened Jiang Qin. Jiang Qin was so shocked that he did not regain his senses for a long time. The others, including the 3 great guardians of the Zoroastrianism, looked at Tang Xian in shock as well. They could not figure it out. Why was the sect leader so excited when he heard the saintess had returned? They could not help but think about it. After the saintess had gone missing, the sect had not appointed a new saintess for a long time. It seemed like the sect leader had no intention of appointing a new saintess. Could it be because the saintess possesses a violet innate spiritual root that Lord Sect Leader thinks she's unique? Or is it because the saintess is the reincarnation of a goddess? They could not help but speculate inwardly. Of course, they did not believe in the so-called reincarnation of the goddess. They only felt that it was a fabrication. It's true. At this moment, Lung Ying, the hall master of the enforcement hall, was the first to regain his senses. He hesitated for a moment before he continued to say, however, the saintess violated the rules of the Zoroastrianism when she went missing. Not only did she have a husband, but she even gave birth to a daughter. She and her daughter are now. Just as Frigid Eagle was about to say that the saintess and her daughter were temporarily detained in the enforcement hall, Tang Xian interrupted him sternly. What? The saintess has a husband? She even gave birth to a daughter with him? Tang Xian's voice grew louder and louder as he spoke. His voice was filled with rage. As his anger rose, a domineering and nearly unparalleled aura appeared on his body again, and it swept out in a devastating manner. This time, even some of the weaker Golden Flame elders felt pressured. On the Saints' Island under the clouds, the group of Saint Lan's elite disciples who had just heaved a sigh of relief suddenly felt the aura that was even more terrifying than before. For a moment, they were pressured to the point of suffocation. This time, those with a weaker cultivation base were bleeding from all 7 of their orifices. They were either sitting on the ground, lying on the ground, or kneeling on the ground. What's going on? The aura of someone who has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage is already so terrifying. How terrifying would it be if a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage unleashed his full strength? A powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage is too terrifying, as expected of someone who stands at the peak of the Tao Martial Saint Land. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, the group of Silver Flame Elders, Bronze Flame Elders, and True Disciples were shocked. After a few breaths, the domineering and invincible aura disappeared again. The group of elders and disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism sighed in relief. Especially those elite disciples with weaker cultivations, they felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders, as if they had picked up their lives. Behind the clouds in the sky above the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. What's going on? Tang Xian asked coldly as he stared at Lung Ying. It was as though he could see through everything. Lord Sect Leader, the saint girl went missing when she was still an infant. When Gan Ru Yan, Guardian Qinghua's direct disciple, found her, she was already married and pregnant. Lung Ying braced himself and replied to the enraged Tang Xian. After that, Gan Ru Yan brought the saint girl back to the sect. However, she didn't tell anyone, including Guardian Qinghua, about this. Instead, she hid the saint girl in her mansion. She even allowed the saint girl to give birth to her child. A few years later, Jiang Qin, the vice hall master of the enforcement hall, received a report from Wen Yan, the direct disciple of Sanctum leader Lu Tai from the Azure Dragon Sanctum. Jiang Qin then brought the saint girl and her child back to the enforcement hall to await Lord Sect Leader's decision after he comes out of closed-door cultivation. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been rendered speechless by the enraged Tang Xian. On the other hand, Lung Ying, the hall master of the enforcement hall, explained the entire story to Tang Xian. Guardian Qinghua, was it Ru Yan who found the saint girl? Tang Xian asked as he looked at Qinghua after listening to Lung Ying's story. At this moment, his tone was much calmer. Nobody knew if it was because Qinghua was a guardian with a high status in Zoroastrianism, or because his anger had subsided. Yes, Qinghua nodded. That girl found the saint girl in the lower province of the Tao Martial Saint Land. She was indeed in the wrong. Not only did she not report this matter, but she even hid the saint girl and allowed her to give birth to her child. Sect leader, I've already ordered that girl to surrender herself to the enforcement hall. I'll accept whatever punishment sect leader wants to mete out to her. As soon as Qinghua finished speaking, he sighed. It was as though he had aged a few years. Ru Yan is the saint girl's twin sister. It's normal for her to protect the saint girl. You don't have to take this matter to heart, Guardian Qinghua. Tang Xian shook his head. His eyes were cold as he asked angrily, I just want to know who the saint girl's husband is. Who's so daring as to blaspheme the saint girl of Zoroastrianism? When Tang Xian reached the end of his sentence, his voice began to tremble. It was a tremble of fear. However, in other people's ears, it sounded like a tremble of anger. As the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian was terrified when he found out the saint girl had a husband and even gave birth to a daughter. This was something the others did not notice. Otherwise, they would not be able to comprehend this. They would have been shocked. Lord Sect Leader. At this moment, Lung Ying spoke again. We've asked the saint girl who her husband is, but she's unwilling to tell us. We didn't dare to torture or force the saint girl to tell us before we received your order, Lord Sect Leader. You did the right thing. Tang Xian took a deep breath to calm the fear in his heart. He nodded and said, Since Ru Yen found the saint girl in the lower province, the man must be from the lower province as well. If the saint girl doesn't want to tell us, we'll start with Ru Yen and find out more about the man. Tang Xian's anxious voice was laced with a hint of fear. That was right, it was fear again. Nobody knew what kind of secret the saint girl of Zoroastrianism was hiding. She was able to strike fear in the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, who had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Hall Master Lung, bring me to see that girl, Ru Yen. After I find out about that man's background from her, I'll personally head to the lower province and bring that man back. Tang Xian's words shocked the high-ranking officials of Zoroastrianism. Chapter 2161. Even though the higher-ups of Zoroastrianism already knew about it, that holy maiden had an extraordinary status in the eyes of the sect leader. However, they did not expect that the sect leader would not hesitate to make a move personally in order to find the person who defiled the saintess. Lord Hierarch. At this moment, Lung Ying, the hall master of the enforcement hall, had no choice but to remind them. Currently, all the inter-province transportation formations in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land have lost their function. They can no longer send people to the lower province. Although Tang Xian was the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, he had been in closed-door cultivation for a long time. Due to this reason, he did not know much about the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. The interdomain teleportation array has lost its function? We can't teleport people to the lower province anymore? Tang Xian could not help but frown when he heard Lung Ying's reminder. He asked in a deep voice, What happened? Lung Ying told Tang Xian about the rumors that had spread in the Dao Martial Saint Land. These rumors were all about the devil race from the land of exile invading the Debussy subterranean and causing the interdomain teleportation portal to lose its function. In this case, the devil clans from the land of exile might have invaded the lower province again? Tang Xian's expression instantly turned serious after hearing Lung Ying's story. Then he looked at the two vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. Although it's not 100% certain that the devil clans will return to the Dao Martial Saint Land, it's still possible. Have you sent any elders or disciples out to purchase supplies in case of an emergency? Lord Sect Leader, we've ordered our men to purchase a large amount of resources. Even if the devil clan really invades the upper province, Zoroastrianism will be able to fight against them while being self-sufficient. One of the vice sect masters said. The other vice sect master also nodded. Very good. Tang Xian nodded in satisfaction. He then looked at Lung Ying and said, Hall Master Lung, bring me to Ru Yen. After meeting her, bring me to the saintess of Zoroastrianism, who has been missing for many years, and the daughter of her, and that reckless man from the lower province. When Tang Xian mentioned the men from the lower province, apart from the anger in his eyes, there was also fear that came from the bottom of his heart and soul. It was really hard for him to imagine. If that person knew that the saintess of Zoroastrianism had fallen in love with another man, and had even given birth to a daughter, how angry would he be? He had witnessed the terror of that person decades ago. Even now, he still had a deep impression of it. Yes, Lord Hierarch. Lung Ying replied respectfully and turned to lead the way. Guardian Xinghua, if that girl Ru Yen is willing to cooperate, I can let bygones be bygones on account of her eagerness to protect her younger sister. But if she doesn't want to cooperate, I can only punish her according to the rules. Before he left, Tang Xian glanced at Qing Hu once more. Only after he finished speaking to Qing Hu did he leave with Ice Hawk. Qing Hu could only smile wryly when he heard Tang Xian's words. He knew his disciple very well. She would never betray her sister's man without her sister's permission. Senior brother Qing Hu, you're too lenient with your disciple. Hong Yun sighed. Although she looked young, she was not much younger than Qing Hu. She was from the same generation as Qing Hu. On this day, news of Tang Xian, a disciple of Zoroastrianism, coming out of closed-door cultivation, and successfully breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage spread from Zoroastrianism. It did not take long for the news to spread in the Western region, shocking everyone in the Western region. Lord Hierarch of Saint Sect has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form? After the great guardian of Saint Sect passed the heavenly tribulation and ascended, there's another powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Saint Sect? Lord Hierarch of Saint Sect has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint Land. In the Western region, people who worshipped Zoroastrianism were extremely excited when they learned that Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. As time passed, the news spread out of the Western region, and the entire Tao Martial Saint Land. The entire Tao Martial Saint Land was in an uproar. Zoroastrianism had a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. This was a big deal to the entire Tao Martial Saint Land. After all, previously, among the 3 great sects in the Tao Martial Saint Land, only Zhuangzi Buddhism and Heaven Divination sect each had a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The strongest person in Zoroastrianism was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Naturally, Tang Xian was not an ordinary powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. In the Tao Martial Saint Land, apart from being ranked 4th on the Supreme Saint ranking, he was also widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Previously, the 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage from Zhuangzi Buddhism and Heaven Divination sect had joined forces to kill Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Then, they would lead the 2 great sects to divide the cultivation resources of Zoroastrianism. However, Tang Xian still managed to escape, even when the 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage joined forces. This was because Tang Xian knew a terrifying movement divine ability. Moreover, it was a rare movement divine ability called the Evasion divine ability. Once he cast it, even a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage would not be able to find him. After Tang Xian had escaped from the 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage from the 2 great sects, he did not forget to threaten them. If they dared to attack anyone from Zoroastrianism, he would break into the 2 sects with his escape art, and kill all the other people from the 2 sects. With Tang Xian's strength and the mysterious escape divine ability, apart from the 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, nobody in the 2 great sects was a match for him. One could imagine that once Tang Xian chose to fight to the death, the 2 great sects would definitely suffer heavy losses. After all, although the 2 powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage were powerful, it was impossible for them to protect everyone in the 2 great sections. There were bound to be some people whom they could not protect. It was also because of this that Zoroastrianism was able to preserve itself and continue to contend against the 2 great religions. It can be said that the reason why Zoroastrianism still existed in this world was mostly because of the mysterious movement technique that sect leader Tang Xian had mastered. Tang Xian made a breakthrough? Damn it! He actually broke through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. When his cultivation base was only at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he was already not afraid of Lord High Priest of our Heaven Divination sect with his movement divine ability. Now that he has broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, I'm afraid his strength is comparable to Lord High Priest with his movement divine ability. I wonder where he obtained that movement divine ability. It's said that the movement divine ability is of a higher grade than most of the high-grade movement divine abilities in the Tao Martial Saint Land. That's right. If there's a higher grade divine ability, then the movement divine ability that the sect leader of Zoroastrianism has mastered must be a higher grade divine ability. It's a good thing the sect leader of Zoroastrianism didn't share his movement divine ability. Otherwise, it would only take 3 to 5 people from Zoroastrianism to master that divine ability to create chaos in the Tao Martial Saint Land. When news of Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Celestial Ascension form, spread to the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the Heaven Divination sect, the elders and disciples of the two great sects were shocked. Many of them were worried. Would Tang Xian come looking for trouble with the Zhuangzi Buddhism and the Heaven Divination sect? Previously, Tang Xian did not come looking for trouble with them, because although his movement divine ability was terrifying, it was not enough to defeat powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, it was uncertain now. This was because Tang Xian was no longer a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. In the entire Tao Martial Saint Land, apart from Tang Xian himself, nobody knew the origin of the mysterious movement divine ability that he had mastered. Tang Xian was the only one who knew. The movement divine ability he mastered did not belong to the mundane realm. Instead, it was a movement divine ability that was superior to the mundane realm. The divine ability was passed down to him by a mysterious powerhouse who had appeared in the Zoroastrianism a few decades ago. At that time, the mysterious powerhouse had asked him to do something for him, so he had given him the movement divine ability as a reward. Due to the movement divine ability, he was widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint Land. He had successfully protected the Zoroastrianism from the other two great sects, who had lost the protection of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. All of these were the secrets in Tang Xian's heart that he would never tell anyone. Time flew by like a white steed. Time was like sand that could not be grasped. It flowed through the gaps between one's fingers. In the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian did not know how much time had passed. He continued to cultivate without any rest. He had broken through and encountered a bottleneck. He continued to push himself to the limit. In the face of his lightning-fast cultivation speed, his innate talent in the martial Tao due to his violet innate spiritual root, and the flow of time in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. So what if he was stuck in a bottleneck? The 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage? He was already close to breaking through. The 3rd form of the Saint Celestial stage? He continued to break through. The 4th form of the Saint Celestial stage? It was a little difficult, but he continued to break through. The 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage? So what if it was more difficult? He continued to break through. The 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage? I've broken through. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lingtian, who was sitting cross-legged in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 2162. As waves of vast and majestic aura swept out from Duan Lingtian's body, his opened eyes were also as bright as 2 small scorching suns, dazzling and eye-catching. Nobody dared to look at Duan Lingtian's eyes at this moment. Otherwise, they would be blinded by the light. Ha 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 ha. When the light in Duan Lingtian's eyes gradually dimmed, he could not help but laugh heartily. His laughter was filled with unbridled arrogance. At this moment, it was as though all the frustrations in his heart had been swept away. And all of this was because of the cultivation he had now. The 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage was also known as the Heavenly Soul form. When one's cultivation base had broken through to this stage, one's soul would reach the unity of heaven and man. This was the foundation of the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the heaven-defying form. The reason a powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage could live forever was because one's soul had reached the unity of heaven and man when one was at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. When my cultivation base was at the 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage, I should be able to tear open the space barrier between this pseudo-realm and the upper province with the help of the Jasper Celestial Sword. Now that my cultivation base is at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, I should be able to tear open the space barrier even without the Jasper Celestial Sword. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he rose to his feet and descended from the sky. I wonder how long I've been in closed-door cultivation. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he went to look for Hualao. Not bad. You've broken through to the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. The soul of a powerhouse at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, in this mundane realm, has reached the unity of heaven and man. If you use your innate ability to attack the soul, I don't think anyone below the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage would be able to withstand your attack. This was the first thing Hualao said to Duan Lingtian when he saw him again. The soul-attacking innate ability referred to the soul-attacking technique that Duan Lingtian had created by combining his spiritual power and the strange pupil after his transformation. In the past, Duan Lingtian had mostly used this technique to harass his opponents and distract them. And now, after hearing Hualao's words, Duan Lingtian also realized, now that his cultivation base had broken through to the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the heavenly soul form, his innate ability would be even more terrifying if he cast it again. Hualao, this time, how long did I spend in seclusion? Right now, this was what Duan Lingtian cared about the most. He wanted to know how long he had been in seclusion this time. After all, if he had been in seclusion for a long time, the leader of Zoroastrianism might have already come out of seclusion. Once the sect leader of Zoroastrianism came out of seclusion, Kerr and her mother would definitely be in danger. That was not what he wanted to see. 3 years. Hualao replied as though he could hear the urgency in Duan Lingtian's voice. 3 years. Upon hearing Hualao's words, Duan Lingtian's expression turned grave immediately. It's been so long. Duan Lingtian knew very well that the 3 years Hualao had spoken of was the time in the outside world. 3 years in the outside world was equivalent to 30 years in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It's been 3 years. I wonder if the sect leader of Zoroastrianism has come out of seclusion. Duan Lingtian's expression turned grave when he thought of this. I hope he hasn't come out of seclusion yet. After all, it's not unusual for a powerhouse with his cultivation base to go into seclusion for 8 to 10 years. Although this was what Duan Lingtian thought to himself, he was still anxious. Currently, all he wanted to do was to hurry to the sect of Zoroastrianism and rescue Kerr and their daughter. Then, he would think of a way to return to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. 3 years had passed. The lower province should have been completely occupied by the devil clans, right? His family and his friends were still in the lower district. Hualao, I have to leave this place now. Can you remind me to avoid those killing formations? Duan Lingtian said to Hualao. Without waiting for Hualao's reply, he left the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda with just a thought, and appeared in the pseudo-realm created by the 3 eminent devils. Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh when he reappeared in the pseudo-realm after 3 years. The 3 devils who have ascended a long time ago actually left behind a pseudo-realm and killed so many powerhouses in the Saint Province realm. Now that we humans have lost those powerhouses, we'll definitely suffer a great loss when facing the devils. Duan Lingtian's heart sank when he thought about this. After leaving this place, I'll make a trip to Sin City before returning to Zoroastrianism. Duan Lingtian quickly made up his mind. What he wanted to do the most now was to return to Zoroastrianism and rescue Kerr and their daughter. However, when he thought about how the people in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land were still unaware that the devil clans had arrived in the Saint Province realm, he could not help but feel anxious. Previously, there were rumors that the devil clans would return to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land and invade the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. However, most of the people in the upper province were only nervous in the beginning. In the end, they didn't think much of it. However, I'm certain the devil clans have already arrived in the Saint Province realm. and their first stop is the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. I must let everyone in the upper province know about this. As for the deaths of the group of powerhouses who entered this pseudo-realm 3 years ago, I'm sure everyone in the upper province has already heard about it. However, they might not know that the culprits behind all of this are 3 eminent celestials from the Devil clan. For this reason, Duan Lingtian planned to go to Sin City to reveal the truth before returning to Zoroastrianism. Everyone in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land had the right to know the truth. Let's go. Hualao's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears, reminding Duan Lingtian to head to the spatial barrier between this pseudo-realm and the upper province. Duan Lingtian nodded. After putting the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda away, he began to make his move. 3 years ago, there were many powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage who died here. There must be many valuable cultivation resources in their spatial rings. It's a pity their spatial rings were destroyed by the power of the killing formations, causing the cultivation resources to disappear as well. Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh when he thought about this. Since the spatial rings were destroyed, it was only natural that the items inside were destroyed as well. Under Hualao's guidance, Duan Lingtian avoided one killing formation after another, and finally arrived at the spatial barrier that led to the upper province. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something and exclaimed in surprise. As it turned out, when Duan Lingtian arrived at the spatial barrier, he discovered many dried bloodstains on the ground. Based on how dried the bloodstains were, it was obvious they were left behind a few years ago. It seems like someone came to investigate after the powerhouses were killed. I'm afraid they're all dead. Duan Lingtian sighed when he thought about this. I hope there aren't many people who came to investigate. Otherwise, the Saint Province realm will lose another batch of powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or higher. Duan Lingtian knew very well. Those who were capable of tearing open the spatial barrier and coming here from the upper province were at least at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He was certain the dried bloodstains belonged to powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage or higher. However, Duan Lingtian was unaware that there were 2 people from the upper province realm who came to the upper province realm. Although 2 people from the upper province had entered the Saint Province realm, they did not die. They had only paid a hefty price. If Duan Lingtian knew about this, he would not have sighed. Swoosh. At this moment, a sword had appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand. It was the 1,000 inscriptions Saint sword that he had obtained from the Ground Axe Alliance when he first arrived in Sin City. Break! At the same time, the Sun Saint origin in Duan Lingtian's body surged out like a raging dragon into the 1,000 inscriptions Saint sword in his hand. Swoosh! The 1,000 inscriptions Saint sword that contained the profundity of the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart sword flew out and slashed at the void in front of him. All of a sudden, rip! Along with a tearing sound, a crack appeared in the void in front of him. It was a very small crack, less than a foot wide. Now that my cultivation base has broken through to the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Sun Saint origin in my body is much stronger than ordinary powerhouses at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, it's still lacking compared to the Saint origin of a powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. It was easy for Duan Lingtian to notice this when he swung his sword earlier. This verified Hualao's words. As the power of the sun fused into his body and mixed with the power in his body, the advantage would become smaller and smaller as time went on. When he passed the heavenly tribulation and ascended to the Devata realm, the sun force would be much stronger than before. Even if his energy had been fused with the sun force, he would no longer have an advantage over those with the same cultivation base. At that time, the sun force would only give him some of the characteristics of the sun flame. It seems like if I don't cast the elementary devouring tactic, or use the Jasper Celestial Sword, I won't be able to tear open the space barrier and return to the upper province. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Elementary devouring tactic. As soon as this thought appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind, he immediately cast the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic. In just a blink of an eye, a whirlpool appeared and merged with Duan Lingtian's body. It greedily devoured the heaven and earth spirit energy in its surroundings. It looked like a bottomless pit. However, it was not a bottomless pit. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian's Sun Saint origin was raised to its limit. Break. Chapter 2163. Swoosh. The 1,000 inscriptions Saint sword that contained Duan Lingtian's Sun Saint origin, that had been raised to its limit, flew out under the sword-wielding art, that was compatible with the third stage of the Supreme Sword Dao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. Rip. Another ripping sound rang in the air. The tear in the void that had yet to close up suddenly expanded from less than a foot long to more than 10 feet long. It was the same sword, but due to the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, Duan Lingtian had cast, its destructive power had increased to a whole new level. It's time for me to leave. With this thought in mind, Duan Lingtian flew into the tear in the void and disappeared into the pseudo-realm created by the three eminent devils. After entering the tear in the void, Duan Lingtian only saw darkness in front of him for a moment before he saw light again. When he saw light again, Duan Lingtian saw a familiar scene. 3 years ago, Duan Lingtian had entered the pseudo-realm created by the three eminent celestials through the tear in the void in this place. I'm out. I'm finally out. Although Duan Lingtian was mentally prepared, he still felt as though he had been given a new lease of life when he came out. He could not help but laugh out loud. His laughter was unbridled and carefree. Although only 3 years had passed in the outside world, he had been cultivating day and night in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda for 30 years. He had used these 30 years of cultivation in exchange for his current cultivation base. From now on, I, Duan Lingtian, no longer have to hide my identity in the Dao Martial Saint Land. I'm Duan Lingtian, I'll never change my name. Without warning, Duan Lingtian removed the loose black robe he was wearing and put on a long purple robe. Moreover, his face had also reverted to its original appearance. He had dashing eyebrows and bright eyes. He was handsome and elegant. This was Duan Lingtian's true appearance. Currently, his cultivation base had broken through to the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian was confident he would not be afraid as long as he did not encounter someone at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After all, how many people had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land? Sin City. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian seemed to have recalled something. His eyes flashed as he looked towards the south. It was the direction of Sin City. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian moved as though he had transformed into a gust of wind as he flew towards Sin City. After 3 years, Duan Lingtian felt as though a lifetime had passed since he had returned to Sin City. Duan Lingtian had only left Sin City for 3 years in the outside world. However, in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Duan Lingtian had left Sin City for 30 years. The world had changed in 30 years. It was no wonder Duan Lingtian felt this way. Apart from that, Duan Lingtian was in a good mood. Perhaps it had something to do with the fact that he dared to enter Sin City with his true appearance. Along the way, Duan Lingtian's face was naturally the center of attention. This person. He looks familiar. Yes, I think I've seen him somewhere before. However, I can't recall where. I think he looks familiar as well. Duan Lingtian heard similar comments as he walked. Many people said he looked familiar, but they could not recall where they had seen him. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this. These people felt that he looked familiar because they had seen his portrait before. 3.5 years ago, after he had killed Elder Xiezong of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, he had completely enraged the Golden Lion King, Xiekong Sun, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Xiekong Sun had been looking for him everywhere, and had even distributed his portrait. Not only had he issued a bounty for him, but he had even spread the news that he had obtained 2 Super Saint weapons. If it was 3 years ago, he would not have been able to enter Sin City with his true appearance. Even if he had disguised himself, as long as he did not wear a loose robe that concealed his figure, he would have been recognized immediately. At that time, he had witnessed the madness of the sectless cultivators in Sin City. Whoosh! After entering Sin City, Duan Lingtian leaped into the air and shot up into the sky like a rocket. In just a blink of an eye, he was above the central area of Sin City. I remember now. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian leaped into the air, the sectless cultivator who was stunned by Duan Lingtian's appearance finally remembered where he had seen this face before. He's Duan Lingtian, the prodigy of Zoroastrianism, Duan Lingtian. He's the one who obtained 2 super saint weapons. He's the one who killed Xiezong, the son of the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. When the sectless cultivator recognized Duan Lingtian, he could not help but exclaim loudly, "Duan Lingtian? I remember now. He's Duan Lingtian. I still have his portrait in my hand. It's him. It's him. His appearance and build are the same. Duan Lingtian is here. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? This Duan Lingtian is bold enough to show himself in front of us? 3 years ago this Duan Lingtian went missing. We sectless cultivators turned Sin City upside down, but we couldn't find him. Now he's here on his own accord? Perhaps he thinks that after 3 years, we have already forgotten about him." After confirming Duan Lingtian's identity, many sectless cultivators began to discuss among themselves. Some sectless cultivators even stared at Duan Lingtian, who was hovering in the air. Greed could be seen in their eyes. At this moment, they really wanted to capture Duan Lingtian and send him to the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism in exchange for the reward they had been dreaming of. However, for the time being, no one was willing to be the one to take the lead. "Good day, everyone in Sin City. I'm Duan Lingtian," Duan Lingtian said calmly as he hovered in the air above the center of Sin City. Although his voice was not loud, it was filled with Sun Saint origin, so it entered the ears of most people in Sin City. For a moment, the entire Sin City was in an uproar. "Duan Lingtian? This name sounds familiar. How can it not be?" Duan Lingtian is the prodigious disciple of the Zoroastrianism. He's also the person who was hunted down by the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism 3 years ago. In order to find him, the Golden Lion King has increased the reward time and time again. Now the bounty is even scarier. It's him. Could it be the same person? Why do I feel like it's not the same person? If it's that Duan Lingtian, let alone being so high profile, I'm afraid he wouldn't even dare to show himself in Sin City, right? Won't we know if it's the same person if we go over and take a look? The voice seems to be coming from the center of the city. Let's go over. Similar voices could be heard all over the city of Sin. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the same time, many figures flew out from various parts of Sin City. However, they only had one goal in mind. They were heading to the center of Sin City. It's really that Duan Lingtian. He looks exactly the same as the portrait. Even his body shape is exactly the same. Isn't he a little too bold? How dare he show himself in Sin City so openly? Isn't he afraid of death? Is he crazy? It's possible. In the past 3 years, he must have lived like a rat under the pursuit of the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Maybe that's why he's crazy. More and more people gathered in the central area of the city of Sin. When their gazes landed on the purple figure in the sky, they immediately recognized him. It was the person who was wanted by the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Xiekong Sun. He was the prodigious disciple of Zoroastrianism, Duan Lingtian. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, a burst of loud laughter rang in the air. It was getting closer and clearer. "Duan Lingtian, I didn't expect you to come knocking on my door. What a waste of effort. Since you've come knocking on my door, why don't you follow me to the Zhuangzi Buddhism and meet the Golden Lion King? The Golden Lion King wants to meet you even in his dreams." A burly middle-aged man with a stocky build appeared as he laughed. His body seemed to be burning with flames as he flew from afar. From afar, he looked like a fireball as he flew toward Duan Lingtian. "That's Kong Zhen." As the burly middle-aged man approached Duan Lingtian, many sectless cultivators recognized him and cried out in surprise. "Kong Zhen? The person who's ranked 93rd on the Supreme Saint ranking? A powerhouse at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage? Some of the sectless cultivators regained their senses. They vaguely remembered where they had heard Kong Zhen's name. That's him. Kong Zhen, the powerhouse at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage, who's ranked 93rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. One of the sectless cultivators who had cried out earlier said confidently, I didn't expect him to beat us to it. One of the sectless cultivators could not help but sigh when he saw Kong Zhen was getting closer to Duan Lingtian. Although Duan Lingtian, the prodigious disciple of Zoroastrianism, is quite talented, it has only been 3 years. Coupled with the fact that the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism is hunting him down, I don't think he's made much progress. 3 years ago, he was thousands of miles away from Lord Kong Zhen. It's been 3 years since then, let alone the fact that he's being chased by the Black Kshetra sect's Golden Lion King. Even if he could, it's impossible for him to catch up to Lord Kong Zhen. I agree. Lord Kong Zhen is a powerhouse at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage after all. Chapter 2164. When Kong Zhen appeared, many sectless cultivators began to discuss among themselves. Based on their words, they all agreed that Duan Lingtian would be captured by Kong Zhen and sent to Xia Kong Sun, the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism. After all, even a powerhouse at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage would be tempted by Xia Kong Sun, the Golden Lion King's bounty. It's a pity the 2 super saint weapons on him were taken away by the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Otherwise, Kong Zhen wouldn't have just obtained the bounty from the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism. He would have obtained 2 super saint weapons instead. You're overthinking it. If Duan Lingtian had 2 super saint weapons, do you think Kong Zhen would have a chance to kill him? That's right. Although Sin City has lost many powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above 3 years ago, we still have 1 or 2 powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage or above. If Duan Lingtian had a super saint weapon, they would have killed him a long time ago. At the same time, many sectless cultivators sighed. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he heard their words. When did the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism take away my super saint weapon? Where did you get this news from? For this reason, Duan Lingtian intentionally glanced into his spatial ring and noticed the Devil Seal tablet was still lying there quietly. This made him even more puzzled. Who was the one who spread the news? Moreover, based on the sectless cultivator's words, it seemed like they believed the news. Duan Lingtian had heard of the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. He knew the Supreme Elder was at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He was ranked 2nd on the Supreme Saint ranking, second only to Nie Wu Tian, the strongest person in the Tao Martial Saint land. However, Duan Lingtian had never seen the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism before. How could the Supreme Elder have taken away his super saint weapon? Strange. How strange. These words were enough to express Duan Lingtian's feelings at this moment. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was unaware that the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism's Supreme Elder of the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism. 6 months ago, the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism had claimed that he had taken 2 super saint Duan Lingtian. He said that when Duan Lingtian had hidden the 2 super saint weapons somewhere, he had offered to spare Duan Lingtian's life, to force Duan Lingtian to hand the 2 super saint weapons over to him. The Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi sect's Supreme Elder of the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi Duan Ling sect. The Supreme Elder to Duan Zhuangzi was the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Zhuangzi. The Duan Lingtian to Duan Lingtian's peoples to Duan Tian's. Him Zhen was the Lingtian Kong Duan Lingtian. However, because the news spread like wildfire, many people still believed it. Of course, there were more people who were skeptical. That was until the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Xia Kong Sun, stepped forward and announced that he would reduce the bounty on Duan Lingtian. Only then were the remaining people convinced. In the past, the Golden Lion King had increased the bounty again and again, but no one was willing to help. At that time, Duan Lingtian had 2 super holy weapons in his possession. Even if the Golden Lion King offered a bounty, could it be more attractive than 2 super holy weapons? No one bothered with him at all. When Siakong Sun, the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, found out that Duan Lingtian had lost the two super saint weapons, he seemed to have lost his patience and increased the bounty on Duan Lingtian again. Therefore, no matter who it was, as long as they were targeting Duan Lingtian, they were no longer aiming for the super saint weapon. Instead, they were aiming for the reward Siakong Sun had promised them. After all, in their eyes, Duan Lingtian no longer had any super saint weapons in his possession. Most people did not expect this. The supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism claimed that he had snatched the two super saint weapons from Duan Lingtian because he did not want others to beat him to it. He wanted to keep the two super saint weapons for himself. He was very smart. He asked the Golden Lion King, Siakong Sun, to cooperate and reduce the bounty on Duan Lingtian. That way, the others would think that Siakong Sun had confirmed that the two super saint weapons were in the hands of the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. That was why he had reduced the bounty at that time. In truth, this was just a facade deliberately created to make people believe the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism statement. Stop right there. When Kong Zhen was only a few tens of meters away from Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian looked at him with a gaze that was like a bolt of lightning as he shouted out coldly. Duan Lingtian's cold shout was extremely sudden, and even Kong Zhen was shocked to the point of being stunned, and then he unconsciously stopped moving. If you dare to take another step forward, you'll die. Before Kong Zhen could regain his senses, Duan Lingtian had already opened his mouth and shouted coldly again. His voice was cold, but there was no room for doubt in his tone. His words were extremely domineering. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the entire place fell silent again. Even Kong Zhen was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian's overbearing words before he regained his senses. Heavens! Is this Duan Lingtian crazy? How dare he provoke Lord Kong Zhen? In my opinion, he's trying to provoke Lord Kong Zhen so that Lord Kong Zhen will kill him. That way, he won't have to face the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism anymore. I think so too. After all, if he faces the Golden Lion King, the Golden Lion King won't let him die so easily. He'll most likely torture him before he dies. After all, Xiezong, who he killed, is the only son of the Golden Lion King. Many of the sectless cultivators regained their senses. Some of them looked at Duan Lingtian as though they had just seen a ghost. Some of them thought Duan Lingtian was seeking his own death. However, was Duan Lingtian really seeking his own death? Humph. A cold grunt sounded out abruptly. It was Kong Zhen that had recovered from his shock, and the gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian was slightly ghastly. Duan Lingtian, if you want to die, then I won't allow you to. I'll use you to exchange for the reward offered by the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Then, I'll give the Golden Lion King a condition. The condition is that I'll personally witness you being tortured to death. When Kong Zhen reached the end of his sentence, the way he looked at Duan Lingtian changed. It was as though he was looking at a dead man. In Kong Zhen's eyes, Duan Lingtian was indeed no different from a dead man. This was because the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism would never let Duan Lingtian go. I'll repeat this one last time. If you dare to take half a step closer to me, you'll die. Duan Lingtian added impatiently when he saw Kong Zhen's robe fluttering as he charged toward Duan Lingtian again. His tone was even colder now. Die. I'd like to see what makes you think you're qualified to say that to me. This time, Kong Zhen was not stunned by Duan Lingtian's words. After he sneered, the saint origin on his body surged like flames. His robe swelled up and fluttered loudly. In the next moment, his body moved as he continued to charge toward Duan Lingtian. He only had one objective. He wanted to capture Duan Lingtian and send him to the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, Siakong Sun, to claim the reward. You're seeking death. When Duan Lingtian saw how stubborn Kong Zhen was, his left eye's strange pupil flashed. Whoosh! A soul attack in the form of a divine dragon shot out toward Kong Zhen at a ridiculously fast speed. Oh no! When Duan Lingtian's soul attack shot out, Kong Zhen, who had just made his move, seemed to have noticed something. His expression changed abruptly. However, This was destined to be the last expression he would show in his life. This was because the moment he reacted, the soul attack in the form of a divine dragon had already entered his body. It did not leave any wounds on his body, as it continued to move toward his soul. Duan Lingtian's current cultivation base was at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. When he had broken through from the 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage to the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, not only had his saint origin improved, but his soul had also improved as well. The 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage was also known as the Heavenly Soul form. When one's cultivation base had broken through to this stage, one's soul would undergo another transformation and reach the Heaven-Man Unity stage. For this reason, Duan Lingtian's soul was much stronger than Kong Zhen's soul when his cultivation base was only at the 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Under such circumstances, Duan Lingtian's soul was still intact. Duan Lingtian's soul attack easily destroyed Kong Zhen's soul and killed him. Whoosh! Under the shocked gazes of the sectless cultivators, Kong Zhen, who was flying toward Duan Lingtian, seemed to have lost his sense of direction. After flying for a distance, he fell from the sky in a parabola. Bang! A loud sound rang in the air as Kong Zhen was smashed into a pile of meat under everyone's watchful eyes. This scene continuously shocked the eyes of the group of independent cultivators, causing their expressions to change. Some of them with a higher cultivation base looked at Duan Lingtian as though they had seen a ghost. How's it possible for Duan Lingtian to be so strong? That's Kong Zhen, a cultivator at the 5th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He's ranked 93rd on the Supreme Saint ranking. He didn't even make a move, but Kong Zhen fell from the sky as though he had lost control and was smashed into a pile of meat. He didn't make a move? Didn't you notice the fleeting soul aura earlier? Duan Lingtian used a soul attack. Soul attack? That's impossible. I've never heard of Duan Lingtian using a soul attack. Some of the sectless cultivators were certain that Duan Lingtian had something to do with Kong Zhen's death. Some of them were certain that Kong Zhen's death was an accident and had nothing to do with Duan Lingtian. At this moment, the crowd of sectless cultivators was divided into two camps. However, Duan Lingtian did not pay any attention to the sectless cultivators. He pricked his finger, and a drop of blood flowed out from his finger before it rose into the air. Is Duan Lingtian trying to swear on the lightning penalty oath? Some of the sectless cultivators quickly noticed Duan Lingtian's action. All of their attention was focused on Duan Lingtian. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian also swore on the lightning penalty oath. Today I, Duan Lingtian, swear that if I'm lying, I'm willing to be struck to death by the lightning penalty. Chapter 2165. Duan Lingtian had not gotten to the point. However, the sectless cultivators present on the scene could not help but hold their breaths when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. At this moment, all of their attention was on Duan Lingtian. Most of them could not help but feel puzzled. What's Duan Lingtian trying to say? He's actually willing to swear on the lightning penalty oath to prove it. Is he trying to swear on the lightning penalty oath to prove that he doesn't have any super saint weapons? There's no need to prove it, right? After all, Supreme Elder Zhuangzi Buddhism has already proven it. Even so, there must be some people who are skeptical. If Duan Lingtian swears on the lightning penalty oath, it'll be a completely different story. Many sectless cultivators speculated. Unfortunately, they were destined to be disappointed. At the same time, Duan Lingtian said, 3 years ago, in the north of Sin City, the treasure vault that was suspected to be left behind by eminent celestials killed many powerhouses. The culprits were the 3 eminent celestials who left behind the treasure vault. When Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the sectless cultivators present on the scene did not react at all. After all, this was something that everyone knew about. Why did Duan Lingtian bring this up? Does he need to swear on the lightning penalty oath to prove it? I'm afraid there's no one in the upper province who doesn't know about this, right? Many sectless cultivators frowned. The 3 eminent celestials were powerhouses from the devil clans who were left behind in the Dao Martial Saint land during the human devil era. In order to survive, they hid in the mortal continent and spent a long time improving their cultivation base. Duan Lingtian continued to speak. When the Seckless cultivators heard Duan Lingtian's words, horror dawned on them. They could no longer maintain their composure. Devil clans? The three eminent celestials who left behind the treasure vault are actually from the devil clans? Really? Duan Lingtian already swore on the lightning penalty oath. Seeing how he didn't attract the lightning penalty after saying that, it's enough to prove that he's telling the truth. Oh my god. I really didn't expect that the trap was actually left behind by a devil expert. Previously, many people, including me, were puzzled. What kind of expert would be bored enough to open up an independent space to kill later generations? If it was the devil clan, then it would be explainable. Since Duan Lingtian had sworn on the lightning penalty oath, the group of Seckless cultivators did not doubt his words. Moreover, what Duan Lingtian said was also true. This solved many people's doubts. When the Dao Martial Saint land was divided into two, the upper province and the lower province, they set up a formation in each of the upper province and the lower province. The formation in the lower province will automatically activate when the devil clans from the land of exile descend again. After the formation in the lower province is activated, the formation in the upper province will be activated as well. The activation of the formation in the upper province will open up the entrance to the independent space that they created in the upper province and lure human powerhouses into it. Duan Lingtian continued to say, those whose cultivation base is below the fourth form of the Saint Celestial stage will be eliminated after they enter the inner realm. In fact, they're considered lucky. They're lucky because almost all of them died. Duan Lingtian's tone was heavy when he spoke. Although those dead human powerhouses had nothing to do with him, from a human's point of view, he felt sad for their deaths. So that's how it is. Then, does this mean the devil clans have returned to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint land? Horror dawned on the group of devil cultivators when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. They looked at Duan Lingtian as though they were waiting for his confirmation. That's right. Duan Lingtian nodded solemnly. The devil clans from the land of exile have indeed invaded the Dao Martial Saint land. Moreover, they entered the lower province 3 years ago. I'm 100% certain of this. If there's any falsehood in my words, the lightning penalty oath I left behind earlier is still valid. Duan Lingtian's voice was heavy when he spoke. Since Duan Lingtian had sworn on the lightning penalty oath, the group of Seckless cultivators present on the scene did not doubt his words at all. For this reason, they began to panic. The devil clans had really returned. In the past, due to the fact that the inter-province transportation formations in the upper province could no longer transport people to the lower province, many people had speculated that the devil clans had invaded the lower province because there was a gap in the spatial barrier between the Dao Martial Saint land and the land of exile. However, that was mostly just a guess. Most people in the upper province only panicked for a moment before they cast this matter to the back of their minds. However, today, there was someone who swore on the lightning penalty oath that the devil clans had invaded the lower province. Moreover, the lightning penalty oath did not punish him with lightning to kill him. This was enough to prove that the devil clans were not lying. This person was not lying. The devil clans have actually returned. Damn it! Doesn't that mean that the second human devil era is coming to the world? Those three eminent celestials were restless before they ascended to the upper province. They even left behind a trap that killed so many of our powerhouses. If the devil clans invade the upper province, I'm afraid we won't be able to contend with them since we've lost so many powerhouses. It has been 3 years since the devil clans invaded the lower province. They must be waiting for an opportunity to invade the upper province. Or perhaps, they're planning to attack the upper province after they've completely occupied the lower province. I'm afraid it won't be long before the devil clans invade the upper province. The Seckless cultivators began to panic when they heard Duan Lingtian's explanation. Duan Lingtian, how do you know so much about this? One of the Seckless cultivators asked loudly. His voice was loud enough to drown out the commotion. The Seckless cultivators fell silent and looked at Duan Lingtian in unison. That was right. How did Duan Lingtian know so much about this? Since they had sworn on the lightning penalty oath, they did not doubt Duan Lingtian's words. However, they were curious about how Duan Lingtian knew about this. How do I know so much about this? Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed. He did not beat around the bush and said bluntly, "It's because I entered the independent space left behind by the three eminent devils 3 years ago. I'm the only one who survived after those powerhouses below the 4th form of the Saint Celestial stage were eliminated." Whoosh! The crowd burst into an uproar when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. However, most of the sectless cultivators were still skeptical. Based on what you're saying, you also entered the trap left behind by the 3 eminent devils 3 years ago? Moreover, you managed to pass the initial test and stayed? What a joke! As far as I know, those powerhouses below the 4th form of the Saint Celestial stage were eliminated. Are you trying to say you were already at the 4th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or higher 3 years ago? If I'm not mistaken, your strength was only at the 3rd form of the Saint Celestial stage, right? The sectless cultivators questioned Duan Lingtian. I can understand your doubts. However, if I were to tell you about my other identity, perhaps all of you would no longer doubt me. Duan Lingtian said. Identity? What identity? Many sectless cultivators frowned. They did not understand what Duan Lingtian meant. Swoosh! While the sectless cultivators were still frowning, Duan Lingtian raised his hand and took out a long black robe to cover his entire body. This long black robe was the same one he wore when he appeared in public as the black-robed man. Duan Lingtian's face and body were covered by the black robe. The black-robed man. The sectless cultivators were dumbfounded. Was Duan Lingtian not the same as the black-robed man, who became famous in Sin City 3 years ago? If I'm not mistaken, the black-robed man appeared after Duan Lingtian killed Xiezong, the son of the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Does this mean the black-robed man is Duan Lingtian? If that's the case, doesn't this mean Duan Lingtian hasn't left Sin City all this while? He just changed his identity, an identity that no one would have thought of. I can't believe Duan Lingtian is the black-robed man. This world is too small. It's too surreal. The sectless cultivators present on the scene sighed when they saw Duan Lingtian's disguise. Not many people suspected Duan Lingtian's identity as the black-robed man. If Duan Lingtian was the black-robed man, no one would recognize him after he entered the trap left behind by the 3 eminent devils. As far as they knew, the black-robed man had indeed entered the trap and was not eliminated. Duan Lingtian, since you're the black-robed man and didn't die in that place, why didn't you come out earlier and tell us about the devil clans invading the Dao Martial Saint land? That's right. Don't you know that if you told us earlier, we would have been able to guard against the invasion earlier? Duan Lingtian, you're being unkind. Many sectless cultivators criticized Duan Lingtian. It was as though Duan Lingtian would be a sinner if the devil clans annihilated the human race. Humph! Duan Lingtian snorted. How do you know I didn't come out today? You only came out today. Many people were stunned when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. Impossible! The Supreme Elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism announced that he took 2 Super Saint weapons from you a year ago. It's impossible for you to stay in that place until today. Chapter 2166. A year ago, you took away the 2 Super Saint weapons in my hands? Duan Lingtian could not help but laugh when he saw the sectless cultivators looking at him. As the person in question, how come I didn't know about it? In addition, I've already sworn on the lightning penalty oath earlier. If what I say now is false, the lightning penalty oath will definitely come true, and the lightning penalty will be imposed on me. Do you think I'm being punished by the lightning penalty? Duan Lingtian shook his head when he reached the end of his sentence. He was disappointed by the intellect of the sectless cultivators in front of him. How could they believe what they said? How ridiculous! Naturally, Duan Lingtian was unaware of the significance of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land. Otherwise, he would not have thought so. In the eyes of ordinary people, A powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage was invincible. They were like gods. How many people would think a powerhouse at that level would make such a statement in order to obtain the Super Saint weapons? When the Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism first made the statement, many people were skeptical. However, these people still believed him. Moreover, with the cooperation of the Golden Lion King, Siekong Sun, from the Zhuangzi Buddhism, the doubts in their hearts were dispelled. The sectless cultivators fell silent when they heard Duan Lingtian's words. After a while, one of the sectless cultivators looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze and asked, "Does this mean you still have the 2 Super Saint weapons?" Duan Lingtian could sense the greed in the eyes of the sectless cultivators as they looked at him. Duan Lingtian knew very well. If it was not for Kong Zhen's example, many sectless cultivators would have already attacked him and snatched the Super Saint weapon in his hands. No. Duan Lingtian shook his head when he heard the sectless cultivator's question. No. The sectless cultivator was stunned. Didn't you say you've been staying in the independent space created by the 3 eminent devils for the past 3 years? If that's the case, Supreme Elder of Zhuangzi Buddhism wouldn't have snatched your Super Saint weapons. Just now you also admitted to this point? Why are you saying it's not with you now? The sectless cultivator was confused. The other sectless cultivators were confused as well. I said I don't have the 2 Super Saint weapons. I only have 1 Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet. I've never seen the Super Saint weapon, the Traceless Sword. Duan Lingtian, Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King from the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Siekong Sun from the Zhuangzi clan. Siekong Sun. Duan eminent at the end ends. Due to the restriction of the lightning penalty oath, the people in the surroundings did not doubt Duan Lingtian's words at all. I remember 3 years ago, Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King, said Duan Lingtian's sword was suspected to be the Super Saint weapon, the Traceless Sword, but he wasn't 100% certain. One of the sectless cultivators recalled. That seems to be the case. Many sectless cultivators nodded in agreement. Maybe it's the Super Saint weapon, the 9-Cloud Sword. Some of the sectless cultivators said as they looked at Duan Lingtian eagerly. It was as though Duan Lingtian was a peerless treasure. I don't have the Super Saint weapon, the 9-Cloud Sword either. However, Duan Lingtian's words mercilessly refuted their speculation. At this moment, all of a sudden, Duan Lingtian. A furious roar that sounded like a lion's roar resonated in the distance. As soon as the voice left his mouth, a tall figure appeared before everyone's eyes. It was as though he had appeared out of thin air. Based on this, one could see that this person was extremely fast. The speed of this person was so fast that it was beyond the reach of ordinary people. It was an old man with a height of 2 meters. Not only was he tall, but he was also muscular. From afar, he looked like a human-shaped beast. The old man had white hair that stood on end. His face was covered with a white curly beard. Coupled with his large head, he looked like a gigantic lion's head. Apart from that, under the old man's thick eyebrows were a pair of eyes that were as large as gongs. When he glared, he looked like an angry Vajra. When the old man appeared, a terrifying aura surged out of his body. It seemed as though the air around him had turned stagnant. Golden Lion King. It's the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Some of the sectless cultivators could not help but exclaim when they recognized the old man. I didn't expect the Golden Lion King to come so quickly. It seems like he's well informed. This means there are a lot of Zhuangzi Buddhism's eyes and ears in Sin City. When he learned that Duan Lingtian has appeared in Sin City, he must have dropped everything and rushed over. After all, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. It's a good opportunity to avenge his son. I'm afraid Duan Lingtian is in grave danger today. As the sectless cultivators discussed among themselves, they could not help but look at Duan Lingtian with a hint of pity in their eyes. It was as though they were certain Duan Lingtian would die in the hands of the Golden Lion King. At this moment, it seemed as though they had completely forgotten about it. Duan Lingtian had only escaped from the independent realm left behind by the 3 eminent celestials today. In order to return to the upper province from the independent realm, one had to tear open the space barrier. One had to be at least at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage to tear open the space barrier between the independent realm and the upper province. Duan Lingtian, I didn't expect you to appear in such a manner. The old man who looked like a lion stopped in his tracks and looked at Duan Lingtian. I don't care why you appeared in such a manner. You'll definitely die today. Since Duan Lingtian was not in disguise, the Golden Lion King recognized him with just a glance. Saint Origin surged out of the Golden Lion King's body as soon as he recognized Duan Lingtian. It was a terrifying and oppressive aura that caused many sectless cultivators with a weaker cultivation base to retreat. You're the Golden Lion King, Siakong-sen? When the Golden Lion King looked at Duan Lingtian was also looking at the Golden Lion King. This was his first time meeting the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. In the past, he had only met the Greenback King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. However, the Greenback King had died in the pseudo-realm left behind by the 3 eminent celestials. Roar! However, the Golden Lion King only responded to Duan Lingtian with a low roar. One could vaguely hear the extreme anger contained in this low roar. In the next moment, under everyone's watchful eyes, vast and majestic Saint Origin gushed out of the Golden Lion King's body, causing him to look as though he had turned into a blazing sun, dazzling and dazzling. The Golden Lion King is going to make his move. Many people were shocked when they saw this. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion rang in the air as the Golden Lion King's figure shot toward Duan Lingtian at an exaggerated speed. It was as though he had borrowed the force of the explosion to propel himself forward. He disappeared. In the eyes of many sectless cultivators, it seemed as though the Golden Lion King had vanished into thin air. Naturally, the Golden Lion King did not disappear. His speed was so fast that the sectless cultivators, with a weaker cultivation base, could not capture his movements. In the eyes of some sectless cultivators with a higher cultivation base, the Golden Lion King was like a ghost. Even if they tried their best to widen their eyes, they could only catch a fleeting afterimage. Fast. He's too fast. As expected of the Golden Lion King, who's ranked 3rd among the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, and ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Siakong-sen, the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism, was a famous powerhouse in the Tao martial saint land. However, today, he had made a move against Duan Lingtian, a prodigious disciple of Zoroastrianism. It could be said that he was bullying the weak. The group of sectless cultivators present on the scene also thought that Siakong-sen was doomed. There was no doubt that Duan Lingtian would die today when he faced Siakong-sen. However, would the truth be as they thought? The 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. His strength is indeed not bad. The sectless cultivators could only see afterimages of the Golden Lion King. However, Duan Lingtian was able to see everything the Golden Lion King did. His every move was clearly seen by Duan Lingtian. Elementary devouring tactic. Before the Golden Lion King made his move, Duan Lingtian had already accumulated his Sun Saint energy. As soon as the Golden Lion King made his move, Duan Lingtian cast his assist-type divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic. In just a blink of an eye, a whirlpool appeared and merged with Duan Lingtian's body. It emitted a terrifying suction force that seemed capable of devouring heaven and earth. As soon as the whirlpool appeared, the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings surged into Duan Lingtian's body at an alarming speed. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian's Sun Saint energy rose to its limit. It was stronger than most powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and was second only to powerhouses at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Boom! As soon as Duan Lingtian cast his divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, Siakong-sen cast his assist-type divine ability as well. In just a blink of an eye, the Saint Origin in his body rose to another level. It was comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. In just a blink of an eye, Siakong-sen's strength was no weaker than Duan Lingtian. He was on par with Duan Lingtian. As expected of the Golden Lion King, one of the four great karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. Your assist-type divine ability is not weak. However, if this is all you've got, I'm afraid you won't be able to avenge your son today. Duan Lingtian said indifferently as the Golden Lion King charged toward him like a phantom. Chapter 2167. Shameless Boasting. When Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King, heard Duan Lingtian's words, he could not help but laugh out of anger. It was as though he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Siekong Sun was the Golden Lion King, one of the four great karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. His cultivation base had long since broken through to the seventh form of the Saint Celestial stage. He could be considered one of the strongest powerhouses at the seventh form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land. This could be seen from his ranking on the Supreme Saint ranking. He, Siekong Sun, was ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Most of the people who were ranked on the Supreme Saint ranking had a similar cultivation base as him. But there were only a few people who were ranked higher than him. However, a young brat dared to boast shamelessly and did not take him seriously. How could he not be angry? Shameless boasting? Duan Lingtian scoffed when he heard Siekong Sun's words. You'll find out soon enough if I boast shamelessly or not. I'd like to see it for myself. Siekong Sun said coldly as he cast his movement martial tactic and movement divine ability to charge toward Duan Lingtian at an even faster speed. Right now, Siekong Sun was like an enraged lion that was about to tear apart the prey that was toying with him. Whoosh! As soon as Siekong Sun sped up, the celestial supreme treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword, appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand. When the Sun Saint origin in Duan Lingtian's body was infused into the Jasper Celestial Sword, the Jasper Celestial Sword immediately shone brightly. A terrifying destructive aura spread out, causing the group of sectless cultivators to shudder. This is because you didn't teach your son well. When Duan Lingtian spoke again, the Jasper Celestial Sword in his hand suddenly transformed into a sword ray that shot out of his hand toward Siekong Sun. Apart from the Sun Saint origin that Duan Lingtian had raised to its limit, it also contained the sword-wielding art that was given to him by the third stage of the Supreme Sword Tao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. Who would be a match for the sword-wielding art of the Sovereign Heart Sword? He just asked, who else? Everything happened in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of the sectless cultivators, the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand seemed to have disappeared into thin air. All that was left was the sound of the sword whistling in the air. In Siekong Sun's eyes, he saw a flash of sword gleam that was heading straight for him. How fast? This was the first thought that appeared in his mind before he could feel fear rising in his heart. Just as this thought popped up in his mind and fear rose in his heart, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. Then a cracking sound entered his ears. When he lowered his head, he was shocked to discover that his arm had been severed. His right arm had been severed from his body. It had been severed from his shoulder. Dazzling blood was gushing out of his severed arm. This is because you slandered me for possessing the Super Saint weapon, the Traceless Sword. Duan Lingtian's voice rang in the air again. Before Siekong Sun could react and grab his severed arm with his left hand, Duan Lingtian's sword had severed Siekong Sun's left arm from his shoulder. This time, even with Siekong Sun's extraordinary strength, he could not help but groan. While he stopped the bleeding from the two severed arms, his figure also stopped in the void in the distance. However, he no longer paid any attention to the two severed arms. Instead, he looked at Duan Lingtian in shock and horror. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought. Before today, Duan Lingtian, whom he had never paid any attention to, actually possessed such powerful and terrifying strength today. Any of the two swords Duan Lingtian had just swung out could have taken his life. However, Duan Lingtian seemed to be deliberately teasing him. That was why he didn't aim for the vital parts of his body. Otherwise he would have died long ago. Of this he was absolutely certain. How is this possible? It's only been 3 years. How can he be so powerful? Could it be that he had another fortuitous encounter in the past 3 years? Siekong Xuan couldn't believe it, nor was he willing to believe it. The person whom he had regarded as an ant in the past actually possessed strength that could easily kill him. At this moment, he even wondered if he was dreaming. Gasp, 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 gasp. At the same time, the group of sexless cultivators finally regained their senses. When they regained their senses, they could not help but gasp. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, causing them to be unable to react in time. It was only when Xie Kongsun stopped charging at Duan Lingtian that they regained their senses. At the same time, they were shocked by the loss Xie Kongsun suffered in front of Duan Lingtian. Heavens! Can someone tell me? Am I dreaming? This is too inconceivable, right? A young sexless cultivator exclaimed in shock and disbelief. I find it unbelievable as well. Xie Kongsun, the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism, who's ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking, had both of his arms severed by Duan Lingtian before he could even get close to Duan Lingtian? Another middle-aged sexless cultivator exclaimed. He stared at Duan Lingtian as though he had just seen a ghost. His gaze remained fixed on Duan Lingtian for a long time, as though Duan Lingtian had some special charm. The Golden Lion King, one of the four great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, has been crippled just like that? Although it's hard to believe, the truth is right in front of our eyes. We have no choice but to believe it. When the Golden Lion King came, he was so high-spirited like a lion. However, he's now like a stray dog. The Golden Lion King doesn't seem to have the time to come back to his senses. Perhaps, he's also puzzled as to how someone he once regarded as an ant could become even more powerful than him in such a short period of time. How can I not be confused if the Golden Lion King is confused? The strength Duan Lingtian had displayed in such a short time had not only shocked the Golden Lion King, but it had also shocked the group of young sexless cultivators. Before the Golden Lion King's arms were severed, although they knew Duan Lingtian was quite strong, they did not expect Duan Lingtian to be stronger than the Golden Lion King. At that time, they had all agreed that Duan Lingtian would not be defeated. They had all agreed that Duan Lingtian would be killed by Xie Kongsun, the Golden Lion King. However, reality had given them a tight slap in the face. Not only was Duan Lingtian not killed by Xie Kongsun, but he had also severed both of Xie Kongsun's arms with just a wave of his hand, turning Xie Kongsun into a cripple. Run! The Golden Lion King, Xie Kongsun, who finally regained his senses and realized Duan Lingtian's strength was not a match for him, thought to himself immediately, run, run, run. As soon as the thought appeared in his mind, he could no longer suppress it. Whoosh! In just a blink of an eye, Xie Kongsun made his move. However, he did not continue to charge toward Duan Lingtian. Instead, he turned around and charged in the opposite direction of Duan Lingtian. Boom! 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 Accompanied by a series of thunderous sounds, it was the vast true essence raging on the surface of Xie Kongsun's body that shook the void, causing a series of air explosions to resound. At this moment, Xie Kongsun had unleashed all his strength and techniques. He did all he could to escape. At this moment, he had completely forgotten about avenging his son's death. All he wanted was to survive, even if the chances were slim. I'm going to use this sword to prove that I wasn't boasting earlier. Duan Lingtian's voice rang in the air again when Xie Kongsun turned around to flee. The sexless cultivators in the surroundings shuddered when they heard his voice. Swoosh! An ear-piercing sword howl that lasted for a brief moment resounded in the air, as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking. When Xie Kongsun heard the sword cry, his body trembled violently, as though he was a bird startled by the twang of a bow. He slowed down a little before he sped up again, and continued to flee. Spurt! As soon as Xie Kongsun sped up, another soft sound rang in the air. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a terrifying bloody hole appeared on the back of Xie Kongsun's head while he was fleeing. Blood was still gushing out of the hole, as if it was free of charge. This scene caused the group of independent cultivators in the surroundings to fall into a dead silence. They only regained their senses when they saw Duan Lingtian flying forward and taking Xie Kongsun's spatial ring before Xie Kongsun's body fell from the sky. They turned to look at Duan Lingtian in unison, as though they had discussed this beforehand. In the depths of their eyes, there was a look of fear. Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King, one of the four great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, had crippled him with just 2 sword strikes. Was that person really Siekong Sun? Was he really the Golden Lion King of Zhuangzi Buddhism, the powerhouse ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking? Duan Lingtian, naturally, noticed the gazes of the sectless cultivators, but he ignored them. He had just devoured Siekong Sun's innate spiritual root, and was about to improve his innate spiritual root. However, even if Siekong Sun possessed an indigo innate spiritual root, it was still a drop in the bucket for him. After all, his innate spiritual root was a violet innate spiritual root that was superior to indigo innate spiritual roots. I wonder when the color of my innate spiritual root will change from light violet to normal violet. Once it's successful, my innate talent will improve, and my cultivation speed will be even faster. At that time, with the help of the time flow on the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, my cultivation base will improve by leaps and bounds. Chapter 2168. Duan Lingtian killed Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King, one of the 3 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism. It was as easy as killing a chicken. The strength he displayed is not something a powerhouse at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage should possess. Someone among the group of sectless cultivators exclaimed in a trembling voice. It was precisely this exclamation of his that caused the remaining group of independent cultivators to recover from their shock, and astonishment appeared on their faces. That's right. The Golden Lion King, Siekong Sun, from Zhuangzi Buddhism, is one of the strongest powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He's ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Even the strongest person at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint land would take a long time to defeat Siekong Sun, let alone kill him so easily. It's impossible for him to defeat Siekong Sun within 100 moves. It seems like Duan Lingtian's strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, right? Although I don't want to believe it, that seems to be the case. His sword-wielding art is too terrifying. Even if the sword in his hand isn't the Traceless Sword or the 9-Cloud Sword, it's definitely a saint weapon that's not inferior to the 2 super saint weapons. I think so too. After the group of sectless cultivators regained their senses, they began to discuss among themselves again. Naturally, the focus of their discussion was on Duan Lingtian. Based on their discussion, it seemed like Duan Lingtian's strength was comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Otherwise, how could Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of Zhuangzi Buddhism, be so weak? Apart from that, they also discovered that Duan Lingtian's sword was not simple. Even if it was not a super saint weapon, it was definitely a divine weapon that was much more powerful than an ordinary 1,000 inscriptions saint weapon. Under normal circumstances, many people would be tempted by such a divine weapon. However, at this moment, none of the sectless cultivators present on the scene were tempted by it. At this moment, let alone the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand, even if they knew the super saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, was still in Duan Lingtian's possession, they still did not dare to covet it. What a joke! Currently, Duan Lingtian's strength was comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, let alone 1 super saint artifact. Even if there were 3 to 5 super saint artifacts, they would not dare to be greedy. They knew they would not even Duan Lingtian's. If Duan Lingtian's, they would be killed. At this moment, many people felt Duan Lingtian was not just an ordinary powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. S. Duan Lingtian. SSSSISTian. SSSSS Saint Celestial is he S? S is Lingtian's he. S Heaven. SSS Heaven. S Saints he kiss? Is. I think so too. Based on Duan Lingtian's strength, he's definitely ranked in the top 10 of the Supreme Saint ranking. I really don't know what Duan Lingtian has gone through in these 3 years. His strength has actually risen to such a terrifying level. Perhaps He managed to survive the trap left behind by the three eminent celestials, and obtained many treasures left behind by the three eminent celestials. That's how he gained his current strength. That's possible. Different voices resonated in the air, as the topic gradually shifted to the origin of Duan Ling Tian's strength. Everyone was speculating about it. The devil clans might invade the upper province at any time. Take care of yourselves. The group of sectless cultivators was still discussing and speculating when Duan Ling Tian said indifferently, before he left like a gust of wind. When the sectless cultivators heard Duan Ling Tian's words and realized Duan Ling Tian had left, they finally regained their senses. At the same time, news of Duan Ling Tian's words under the lightning penalty oath began to spread like wildfire in Sin City. Not only that, but it also spread to the outside of Sin City. News of the Golden Lion King, one of the Zhuangzi Buddhism's four great Karmapa, being killed by Duan Ling Tian had also spread. Duan Ling Tian is the black-robed man who's famous in Sin City? 3 years ago, Duan Ling Tian entered the treasure vault left behind by the three eminent celestials who seemed to have passed the heavenly tribulation. It was confirmed that he was the only survivor among the three eminent celestials who managed to pass the heavenly tribulation. After 3 years, Duan Ling Tian managed to escape from the trap left behind by the three eminent celestials and went to Sin City to reveal the truth. He even swore on the lightning penalty oath, so that people would believe him. The three eminent celestials are actually powerhouses from the devil clans. The formation that activated the trap is actually connected to the formation in the lower province. The formation in the lower province will only be activated when the devil clans from the land of exile come to the lower province again. As the news spread, it caused a huge commotion in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. No one would have thought that the truth from 3 years ago would be like this. As it turned out, the treasure vault left behind by the three eminent celestials was actually a trap left behind by the three eminent celestials from the devil clans. The trap left behind by the three eminent devils was meant to trap and kill the human powerhouses when the devils from the land of exile came to the Dao Martial Saint Land again. This was to help their descendants. The devil clans have come? That guess from the past has come true. In order to verify that guess, we humans have lost so many powerhouses. How are we going to defend ourselves when the devil clans invade the upper province? Those three eminent celestials are really ruthless. They didn't forget to set us up before they ascended. Fortunately, we have Duan Ling Tian. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known that the devil clans had already invaded the lower province and could come to the upper province at any time. We have to be prepared. If the devil clans invade, it won't be a joke. Similar discussions began to spread in a small area near Sin City. In the end, the news began to spread in all directions. Based on the current speed, it would not take long before the entire upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land would hear about this. And Duan Ling Tian's goal of going to the city of Sin to reveal the truth to the public had been achieved. Naturally, the people in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land were aware of this. The devil race from the land of exile had already arrived in the lower province and was about to invade the upper province. News of Duan Ling Tian's actions in Sin City spread like wildfire. It turns out that Duan Ling Tian did not obtain the 2 Super Saint artifacts back then. He only has 1 Super Saint weapon, and it's the Devil Seal tablet that he took back from Xiezong, the son of the Zhuangzi Buddhism Golden Lion King. Humph! That supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, actually used such a despicable method to make a false statement. He must have done that because he doesn't want us to snatch Duan Ling Tian's Super Saint weapon, so he can keep it for himself, right? Originally, I thought powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage were godlike existences. They were high and mighty, and I believed their words unconditionally. I didn't expect it to be a scam. Liar! Liar! As the news that Duan Ling Tian had sworn on the lightning penalty oath spread, even powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage were pulled down from their pedestals. The people in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land realized this. Even powerhouses at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage, who stood at the peak of the Tao martial Saint land, were no different from them. They were not as indifferent to fame and wealth as they had imagined. At the same time, even more shocking news spread to the people in the upper province of the Tao martial Saint land. After 3 years, Duan Lingtian's strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Even the Golden Lion King, Siekong Sun, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, is powerless in front of him? Heavens! Is this for real? If this is true, this is too ridiculous. That's right. Who's Siekong Sun? He's the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. He's one of the strongest powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, and he's ranked 18th on the Supreme Saint ranking. Such a person is powerless in front of Duan Lingtian? I don't care if you believe it or not, but I don't. This is too ridiculous. You don't believe it? Let me tell you. I have a distant cousin, who's a disciple of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. This news is definitely true. I'm sure it's true as well. I'm from Sin City. It's said that many sectless cultivators in Sin City saw what happened. The rumors are true. Duan Lingtian is indeed as strong as a powerhouse at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He severed Siekong Sun's arms with 2 strikes of his sword. When Siekong Sun turned around to flee, he struck again and killed Siekong Sun. Based on what you said, if Duan Lingtian wanted to kill Siekong Sun, he only needed 1 strike of his sword. He was just toying with Siekong Sun with the first 2 strikes? That's right. Most people who were close to Sin City believed Duan Lingtian's strength was so strong that they had no choice but to believe it. In places further away, only a small number of people believed it. In the borderlands of the upper province of the Tao martial Saint land, almost nobody believed it. After all, the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism, was a famous powerhouse in the upper province of the Tao martial Saint land. Chapter 2169. The news from Sin City in the central region spread like wildfire. Even the Zoroastrianism in the western region received the news. Senior brother Duan Lingtian actually showed up. Moreover, he just came out of the trap left behind by the 3 eminent celestials, who killed many powerhouses 3 years ago. As soon as he came out, he went to Sin City and swore on the lightning penalty oath to confirm that the devil clans from the land of exile had invaded the lower province. Heavens! The devil clans have really invaded the lower province. I'm afraid it won't be long before they invade the upper province. The Zoroastrianism was shocked by Duan Lingtian's confirmation that the devil clans had invaded the Tao martial Saint land. Since Duan Lingtian had sworn on the lightning penalty oath and was not killed by the lightning penalty, it meant that he was not lying. Everything he said was true. Although the Zoroastrianism people were shocked by the devil clan's invasion of the Tao martial Saint land, they were not afraid at all. After all, they were supported by one of the 3 great sects in the Tao martial Saint land, the Zoroastrianism. It was a force that stood at the peak of the Tao martial Saint land. If the devil clans had really invaded the upper province, they would be one of the human race's hopes. If they were afraid of the devil clans, the human race might as well surrender. I didn't expect the supreme elder of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, would lie. He was worried someone would snatch the super saint weapon from Duan Lingtian, so he didn't hesitate to make a false statement, saying he had obtained the super saint weapon from Duan Lingtian. What's surprising is senior brother Duan Lingtian doesn't have 2 super saint weapons. He only has 1 super saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet. The Devil Seal Tablet belongs to him. It's time for it to be returned to its rightful owner. News of this spread throughout the Zoroastrianism. At the same time, news of Duan Lingtian killing the Golden Lion King, Siekong Sun, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, had also spread. Senior brother Duan Lingtian crippled Siekong Sun's right arm and left arm with 1 strike before killing Siekong Sun with 1 strike? From the beginning until the end, Siekong Sun didn't even have a chance to retaliate? You must be kidding me. Although I admit that Duan Lingtian's innate talent is very high, and his strength must have improved a lot after 3 years. Even so, it's not to the extent where Siekong Sun is completely helpless, right? This was too ridiculous. That's Siekong Sun we're talking about. Siekong Sun is the Golden Lion King, one of the 4 great Karmapa of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. His cultivation base has long broken through to the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He can be considered as one of the strongest powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Tao Martial Saint Land. How could someone like that be powerless in front of senior brother Duan Lingtian? It seems like senior brother Duan Lingtian's cultivation base has already broken through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage? This news is too ridiculous. I don't believe it. News of Duan Lingtian killing Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect, with 3 strikes had spread to the Zoroastrianism sect. However, they did not believe that Duan Lingtian's strength was comparable to a powerhouse. Even Liu Yan of the Saint Celestial and the others who were close to Duan Lingtian in the past felt that the news was too exaggerated and hard to believe when they heard it. The gap between each form was like a huge chasm. Was not bad. It was extremely difficult for one to make a breakthrough. He had even killed Xiezong, even if there were peerless geniuses with violet innate spiritual roots in the history of the Zoroastrianism sect, and the best cultivation environment in the Tao Martial Saint Land. It would take at least a few decades for them to break through from the 1st form of the Saint Celestial stage to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Even a peerless genius with violet innate spiritual roots at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage wouldn't be able to break through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage in just 3 years. That's right. Therefore, this news is definitely fake news. Nobody in the Zoroastrianism sect believed that Duan Lingtian had really killed Siekong Sun, the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. They thought it was fake news from Sin City. Duan Lingtian, 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage? How can such news be spread? Isn't he afraid of being laughed at? When the news reached the enforcement hall, the enforcement hall's elder Dong Lin couldn't help but sneer. At the same time, his eyes flashed coldly as he said, Duan Lingtian, you've finally shown yourself? I can't believe you're still alive after falling into the trap left behind by the 3 eminent celestials. You're really lucky. I hope you'll stay alive and don't return to Zoroastrianism. Otherwise, even if I'm no match for you, my father will still kill you. Dong Lin's father was Dong Yuanjin, one of the vice hall masters of the enforcement hall. When Dong Lin heard the news, Lu Tai, the sanctum leader of the Azure Dragon Sanctum, and his eldest direct disciple, Bu Hong, had also heard the news. They also found it ridiculous. Duan Lingtian is at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage? This was definitely the biggest joke they had ever heard in their lives. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, behind the clouds above the Saint Island, there were many independent floating islands in the void. At the highest point, there was only one floating island. It was like a high and mighty emperor, looking disdainfully at all directions. This was the place where Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, cultivated. Swoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind whistling rang in the air. A muscular figure flew over from afar and arrived at the highest point of the floating island in just a blink of an eye. Lord Sect Leader. The newcomer stood in the void and bowed respectfully to the floating island in front of him. His words were extremely humble and respectful. If a Zoroastrianism elder was here, he would definitely recognize this person. This person was one of the 2 vice sect leaders of Zoroastrianism. His cultivation base was at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Whoosh! As soon as the vice sect leader of fire worship sect finished speaking, a huge figure appeared out of thin air, as though a gust of wind had blown past. The figure belonged to a tall and muscular middle-aged man. He wore a long white robe that was embroidered with red flames. It was similar to the robes worn by the Zoroastrianism elders and disciples. Naturally, it was only similar to the robes. The flames embroidered on his white robe were unique. Upon closer inspection, one would see that the robes were embroidered with flames. The middle-aged man's long robe was embroidered with flames. From top to bottom, the flames seemed to form a long divine dragon that circled around his body. It was as if a true dragon was protecting him. Although the middle-aged man was tall and muscular, his appearance was decent. He did not look boorish at all. Whether it was her figure or her face, every part was just right, almost perfect. Besides that, the space between this middle-aged man's brows seemed to be filled with a dignified aura that seemed capable of making all things submit before him. And he was the leader of Zoroastrianism. Tang Xian. Is something the matter? Even though Zoroastrianism was spreading the news from the city of Sin, Tang Xian, who was cultivating in his own place, was unaware of it. But he knew. Since the vice sect leader in front of him had come looking for him, there must be a reason. Sect leader. The vice sect master nodded and told Tang Xian about the demon race's arrival in the Debussy subterranean. The devil clans really came to the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Even Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, whose cultivation base was at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, had a grave expression on his face when he heard this. The devil clans from the land of exile were extremely powerful. Tang Xian had read about this in the records left behind by the Zoroastrianism since ancient times. There was no lack of powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the devil clans. In fact, there might even be half-step celestials who had successfully transcended the tribulation, but had yet to ascend to the immortal world. Yes, the vice sect leader nodded. Then he said with a complicated expression on his face, "Speaking of which, this news was confirmed by Duan Lingtian, the prodigious disciple of our Zoroastrianism." Duan Lingtian, the prodigious disciple of our Zoroastrianism, who possesses 2 super saint weapons? Tang Xian asked as he looked at the vice sect leader. It had been some time since he came out of closed-door cultivation. For this reason, he had heard of Duan Lingtian, the prodigious disciple of the Zoroastrianism. Yes, the vice sect leader nodded again. It said that he also fell into the trap left behind by the 3 eminent celestials 3 years ago. However, while the others were eliminated and killed, he survived and stayed in the trap for 3 years. He only came out recently. He stayed in the trap for 3 years. Tang Xian nodded. It seems like that old man from the Zhuangzi Buddhism Chapter was lying.
2170.
I was wondering
Apart
when
from
that old
that,
man
there's
became
another
so
piece
fond
of
of
news.
swearing on the lightning
However,
penalty
I think
oath.
it's fake news.
As it turns out, the vice
He had
sect
his
leader
eyes
of
on the 2 super
Zoroastrianism
saint weapons
who was
in
standing
Duan
near
Lingtian's
Tang's
possession.
possession. The
That's
sect
why he
leader of
deliberately spread
Zoroastrianism
false news.
said after
Lord
a moment
sect
of
leader,
hesitation.
Duan
What
Lingtian
news?
only has
Tang
one
Xian
super
asked
saint
curiously.
weapon.
The
The
devil
news
seal
has something
tablet.
to do with
He
Duan
doesn't have the
Lingtian.
traceless
It's
sword.
said that
He
Duan
has already
Lingtian
sworn
managed
on
to
the
kill
lightning
Xiakong's
penalty
son,
oath to
the
confirm
Golden
this.
Lion King.
The vice sect
One of the
leader
4
added,
great Karmapa of
since the
Zhuangzi
devil
Buddhism,
clans from the
in
land of
front of
exile
everyone
had
in Sin
descended.
City.
The
The vice
traceless
sect
sword
leader
is not
said
as useful
he
as
killed
the devil
Xiakong's
seal
son with
tablet.
3 strikes.
Tang Xian's eyes
raised an
muttered
eyebrow
to
when he heard
himself.
this.
When his
If
words
I'm not
entered the ears
mistaken,
of the vice sect
Xiakong's
master,
son from
the
Zhuangzi
latter
Buddhism
deeply agreed with
could be
him. Considered as one of the strongest powerhouses at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the entire Dao Martial Saint Land. It's almost impossible to kill him with 3 strikes, unless one's at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above. That's what everyone thinks. The vice sect leader nodded. Due to this reason, not many people believe this news. Although Duan Lingtian's innate talent is monstrous, it's absurd that he managed to kill Xiakong's son with 3 strikes. Tang Xian nodded. He knew Duan Lingtian, and knew it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to be strong enough to kill Xiakong's son with 3 strikes in just 3 years. Now that the devil clans are invading, all of you should be prepared. In 3 years, the devil clans must have taken root in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. I'm afraid it won't be long before the powerhouses from the devil clans set up an inter-province transportation formation and invade the upper province, Tang Xian said with a hint of dread on his face. Before that happens, the sect of Zoroastrianism must be prepared. Yes, Lord Sect Leader. The Vice Sect Leader replied respectfully. But he didn't leave. Instead, he seemed to have something to say. Is there anything else? Tang Xian asked. Lord Hierarch. The Vice Sect Leader took a deep breath before he mustered up his courage and said, As far as I know, when you came out of closed-door cultivation, you brought the Saint Lady and her daughter out of the enforcement hall and placed them in your cultivation place. May I know when you gave the order to punish the Saint Lady and her daughter? The Vice Hall Masters of the Law Enforcement Hall are already complaining about this matter, the Vice Sect Leader said with a bitter smile. Vice Hall Masters? Do you have any complaints? Tang Xian sneered. Their Hall Master hasn't said anything yet. Why are they in such a hurry? Since when did I, Tang Xian, allow them to tell me what to do? Go and tell them. If anyone is dissatisfied with this matter, they can come and speak to me personally. Why don't you let them know and I'll go look for them? There was a hint of anger in Tang Xian's voice as he spoke. The Vice Sect Leader was shocked. He broke out in cold sweat as he hastily explained. Lord Hierarch, they only asked casually. They don't intend to make a big deal out of this matter. Since you already have a plan, Lord Hierarch, there's no need for you to pay attention to them. At the same time, he could not help but sigh inwardly. It seems like Lord Hierarch really doesn't want to punish the Saint Lady, the reincarnation of a goddess. Lord Hierarch has really lost his mind. Fortunately, Lord Hierarch is still normal in other aspects. The Vice Sect Leader felt slightly relieved when he thought of this. The sect leader of Zoroastrianism was the backbone of Zoroastrianism. He was also the guardian of Zoroastrianism. If something were to happen to him, Zoroastrianism would definitely decline and even be destroyed. Wait! Just as the Vice Sect Master was about to leave, Tang Xian called out to him again. Lord Hierarch, do you have any other instructions? The Vice Sect Leader stopped in his tracks and looked at Tang Xian respectfully again. In my name, make a statement to the outside world. Tang Xian looked at the Vice Sect Leader and said, The statement is to ask Duan Lingtian to return to Zoroastrianism. Also promise him that as long as he returns to Zoroastrianism, the Zoroastrianism won't covet the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet, in his possession. If he doesn't believe me, he can hide the Devil Seal Tablet outside and return to Zoroastrianism. At that time, I, Tang Xian, the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, am willing to swear on the lightning penalty oath to witness my promise to him. Tang Xian's words revealed his eagerness to have Duan Lingtian return to Zoroastrianism. Lord Hierarch, is it worth it for you to do this for a mere Duan Lingtian? The Vice Sect Leader was stunned. Naturally, it's not worth it for a mere Duan Lingtian, Tang Xian said indifferently. However, the Devil Seal Tablet in his possession is worth it. As long as he's a disciple of Zoroastrianism, he and the Devil Seal Tablet will be a great help to us in Zoroastrianism. Moreover, if the Devil clans invade the upper province and invade Zoroastrianism, I'm sure he'll be willing to lend me the Devil Seal Tablet. With my current strength, if I use the Devil Seal Tablet, none of the Devil clans below the Eminent Celestial would be a match for me. Tang Xian's eyes gleamed coldly when he reached the end of his sentence. In his opinion, as long as he could use the Devil Seal Tablet, the Super Saint weapon that was said to be the bane of the Devil clans, it would not affect him much no matter who had the Devil Seal Tablet. The Devil Seal Tablet was only useful to him in dealing with the Devil clans. Once the Devil race was forced to retreat, the Devil Seal Tombstone would be useless in his hands. For this reason, he did not object to the fact that the Duan Lingtian possessed the Devil Seal Tablet. Realization dawned on the Vice Sect Leader when he heard Tang Xian's words. Tang Xian also returned to his own place of cultivation. He returned to a room in his mansion on an independent island. It was the room where he usually lived and cultivated. Meanwhile, in the eastern part of the mansion where Tang Xian, the sect leader of Fire Worship Sect, cultivated, there was a huge courtyard that occupied a lot of space. These courtyards were where Tang Xian usually received guests. Naturally, There were only a handful of people in the Dao Martial Saint Land who were qualified to be invited by Tang Xian. At this moment, 2 rooms in one of the courtyards were occupied. Apart from 2 identical twin sisters, there was a cute little girl who was about 8 or 9 years old with 2 pigtails. The twin sisters were none other than Duan Lingtian's wife, Ke, and Ke's elder sister, Gan Ruyan. The little girl was Duan Lingtian and Ke's daughter, Duan Siling Yuyan. I noticed that the sect leader seemed to be very respectful to you when he was talking to you. Do you know why? Gan Ruyan looked at Ke in shock. She was shocked when she learned that the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. A powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage was as rare as a phoenix's feather in the Dao Martial Saint Land. When facing her twin sister, not only did she not show the attitude that a superior would show to her inferior, but she also showed the respectful attitude that an inferior would show to a superior in front of her twin sister. This caused her to be shocked, but at the same time, she was also puzzled. I don't know. Ke shook her head slightly as she hugged Duan Siling, who had fallen into a deep sleep. She was puzzled as well. This was the first time I saw him, when he came to the enforcement hall. Initially, I thought he would follow the fire worship sect's rules and order me and Siling to be executed after he came out of closed-door cultivation. I didn't expect him to not be angry when he saw me. Instead, he was so cautious as though he was afraid of offending me. Gan Ruyan fell silent when she heard Ke's words. After a moment of silence, Gan Ruyan sighed again. Initially, I thought he would punish me according to the fire worship sect's rules, since I didn't cooperate with him to reveal your man's background. However, I didn't expect he would release me from the enforcement hall just because of you. It seems like he really thinks you're the reincarnation of a goddess. Otherwise, I can't think of any other explanation. Gan Ruyan looked at Ke and sized her up for a long time. However, she could not find anything special about her younger sister other than the fact that she looked exactly like her. Reincarnation of a goddess? Ke remained silent when she heard Gan Ruyan's words. He only felt that this statement was too absurd and ridiculous. Apart from that, she had also heard from her twin sister that only the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism believed she was the reincarnation of a goddess. The other people, such as the 3 great guardians, the 2 sect leaders, and the other high-ranking officials of the Zoroastrianism, did not agree with this. Sister. All of a sudden, a purple bird flew in from the outside, accompanied by a series of hurried sounds. After flying in, she turned into a young girl in a purple robe. This purple-clad young lady was none other than Gan Ruyan's super divine beast, the purple cloud thunder rock. She was also the closest person to Gan Ruyan. She was also by Gan Ruyan's side when she went to the lower province. Zier, what's wrong? Gan Ruyan asked curiously as she looked at the purple-clad young lady. Sister, there's news about Duan Lingtian. The purple-clad young lady sent a voice transmission to Gan Ruyan. Since she was in the cultivation place of the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, she was worried the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism would overhear her words. Gan Ruyan's eyes lit up when she heard the purple-clad young lady's words. Before the purple-clad young lady could continue speaking, she sent another voice transmission to Ke. Ke, there's news about him. Ke trembled in excitement when she heard Gan Ruyan's voice transmission. Naturally, where is he now? She knew who her sister was referring to. Ke took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in her heart. She immediately looked at Gan Ruyan and impatiently transmitted her voice to her through voice transmission. Said the last time he appeared was in Sin City. Gan Ruyen told Kerr everything the purple-clad girl had told her through voice transmission. 3 years ago, he entered the upper heaven. What Zier said was something that had spread throughout the entire upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Even Gan Ruyen thought it was ridiculous that the Duan Lingtian had killed Xiekong Sun, the Golden Lion King of the Zhuangzi Buddhism. Therefore, she did not mention it to Kerr. She only told Kerr about other things. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. You don't have to worry too much. Gan Ruyen comforted her after she finished speaking. A trap left behind by 3 eminent devil cultivators? He's the only one who survived? After knowing what her man had gone through, Kerr's pretty face turned pale with fright. Although she wasn't by her man's side, she could guess that her man must have gone through a lot of hardships. Kerr's heart ached for the man whom she treasured as much as her own life. Young master. Kerr's eyes were filled with tears at some point. In the western region, in the sky above a mountain near the Zoroastrianism's estate, a tall purple figure stood proudly in the sky. The figure was a young man dressed in a long purple robe. He was tall and handsome. His eyebrows were sharp, and his eyes were bright. He had a graceful bearing, and his body emitted a refreshing aura. As he stood there with an elegant demeanor, he seemed to cause everything around him to lose its splendor. I can't believe the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism has not only come out of closed-door cultivation, but his cultivation base has also broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Suddenly, the young man muttered softly. Fortunately, although he has come out of seclusion, he did not give the order to punish Kerr and her daughter. However, we still have to think of a way to rescue them. I don't feel safe leaving them in the Zoroastrianism. Based on the young man's words, one could easily guess his identity. He was none other than Duan Lingtian, who had just returned from Sin City in the central region. On his way back, Duan Lingtian had heard that the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism had come out of closed-door cultivation and had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, becoming the 4th powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Duan Lingtian's heart sank when he heard about this. He was extremely worried about Kerr and their daughter's safety. Under such circumstances, Duan Lingtian hurried back to the Zoroastrianism's estate. After some investigation, he discovered that the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism had not punished Kerr and their daughter yet. He could not help but sigh in relief. Duan Lingtian hid outside the Zoroastrianism's estate, preparing to enter the Zoroastrianism's estate to rescue Kerr and their daughter. With my current strength, I won't be a match for the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, even if I fully activate the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. Don't tell me I have to enter the 4th level of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda again, thought to himself, and spend another year and a half to break very well. The 7th form if he used all his techniques and fully activated the Jasper Celestial Sword with a frown on his face. He was confident a year and a half powerhouse to the time in the outside world. Who could be certain that the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism would not powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Duan Lingtian did not dare to take the risk. If he lost the bet, and something happened to Kerr and their daughter, he would never be able to forgive himself. Duan Lingtian racked his brains, trying to think of a way to rescue Kerr and their daughter from the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism. At this moment, a statement came from the Zoroastrianism's estate. The statement was personally issued by the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian. The content of the statement was as follows. As the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, Tang Xian has invited Duan Lingtian, the prodigious disciple of the Zoroastrianism, to return. He has also promised that the Zoroastrianism will not covet his grade-level saint weapon, the Devil Seal Tablet. If Duan Lingtian is still worried, he can hide the Devil Seal Tablet outside and return alone. At that time, Tang Xian, the sect leader of the Zoroastrianism, is willing to swear on the lightning penalty oath to prove his promise to Duan Lingtian. When the announcement was made, not only were the people around the Zoroastrianism's estate shocked, but even the elders and disciples of the Zoroastrianism sect were shocked. Lord Sect Leader is willing to make such a statement just to bring Duan Lingtian back? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's said that Lord Sect Leader values talents as much as his own life. I've finally seen it for myself today. With Lord Sect Leader's announcement, it's likely that senior brother Duan Lingtian will return. Once he returns, I'm afraid the true ranking will change again. He'll definitely be ranked first on the true ranking. That's for sure. 3 years ago, senior brother Duan Lingtian killed Elder Xiezong of the Zhuangzi Buddhism sect. His cultivation base is no weaker than the person ranked first on the true ranking. Now that 3 years have passed, with his innate talent, he's definitely much stronger than he was 3 years ago. I'm really looking forward to senior brother Duan Lingtian's return. Ever since senior brother Duan Lingtian left, Zoroastrianism has been like a pool of stagnant water. It's not as lively as it was when senior brother Lingtian was around. While the people of Zoroastrianism discussed among themselves, the disciples of Zoroastrianism were overjoyed as well. Most of them hoped that Duan Lingtian would return. Senior brother Lingtian will have a chance to return? Junior brother Lingtian will be able to return. Many disciples of Zoroastrianism, who were close to Duan Lingtian, including Lu Yin and Lu Mu, were excited when they heard about the announcement made by their sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Why would Lord Sect Leader make such a statement? As the saying went, some people were happy while others were sad. When Buhong, the direct disciple of the sanctum leader of Zoroastrianism, heard about the announcement made by the sect leader of Zoroastrianism, his expression turned grave. Lu Tai, the sanctum leader of the Azure Dragon Sanctum, had a similar expression on his face. Although he really wanted to obtain the class-level divine weapon in Duan Lingtian's possession, since the sect leader of Zoroastrianism had made such a promise to Duan Lingtian, he no longer dared to think about obtaining the class-level divine weapon in Duan Lingtian's possession. Damn it! How could Lord Sect Leader be so foolish? In the law enforcement hall, Elder Dong Lin's expression changed drastically when he heard the announcement made by the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Duan Lingtian, Dong Lin's father, the vice hall master of the law enforcement hall, Dong Yuanjin, narrowed his eyes when he heard about this. A terrifying glint flashed in his eyes. Outside the Zoroastrianism's residence, that sect leader of Zoroastrianism is really wishful thinking. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sneer when he heard the statement from Tang Xian, the leader of Zoroastrianism. There was nothing wrong with Tang Xian's promise. However, Tang Xian seemed to be desperate for talent and was protecting him. However, he was clear in his heart. The reason Tang Xian was acting like this was most likely because he possessed the Devil Seal Tablet. The Devil Seal Tablet. It just so happened that the Devil Seal Tablet was the bane of the Devil race. Once the Devil race invaded the upper region in the future, Zoroastrianism wouldn't have to fear the Devil race's army if they had the Demon Sealing Tombstone to rely on. In fact, Tang Xian could even use the Demon Sealing Tombstone to deal with the Devil race experts at a critical moment, and he couldn't possibly refuse. To Tang Xian, as long as the Devil clansmen are repelled, the Devil Seal Tablet is worth less than 1,000 inscriptions saint weapon. Duan Lingtian was very clear about this. At Tang Xian's level of cultivation, there was no need for him to use the Devil Seal Tombstone unless his opponent was a Devil race expert. As for Devil cultivators from the Dao Martial Saint Land, there was no need for him to use the Devil Seal Tablet, since he was so powerful. If I possess another great saint weapon like the Traceless Sword or the Nine Cloud Sword, I'm afraid he won't be so kind. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Duan Lingtian had indeed guessed correctly. If Tang Xian did not only possess the Devil Seal Tablet, but also another offensive saint weapon, such as the Traceless Sword and the Nine-Cloud Sword. The sect leader of fire worship sect, Tang Xian, would not have made such a statement. After all, whether it was the Traceless Sword or the Nine-Cloud Sword, even Tang Xian would be tempted. If that's the case, I'll return to Zoroastrianism and meet the sect leader of Zoroastrianism. Duan Lingtian made up his mind as his eyes gleamed. Duan Lingtian did not think it was
completely
necessary
different
for him
from
to
how
hide
he
the
was
Devil
when he
Seal
secretly
tablet,
left the
Zoroastrianism
weapon
estate a few
outside.
years ago. In any case, he believed Tang Xian would not dare to make a move on him, since he did not want to risk the Devil Seal tablet being in his possession. Although Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was much lower than Tang Xian's, as a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse, he was immune to any soul-searching secret tactic. For this reason, Duan Lingtian was not worried the sect leader of Zoroastrianism would use the soul-searching secret tactic on him. Zoroastrianism, I'm back. 3 days later, Duan Lingtian flew across the sky and entered the Zoroastrianism's estate. He directly flew over the White Tiger Sanctum's estate that was located east of the Zoroastrianism's estate. He did not bother concealing himself at all. Chapter 2172. At the same time, Duan Lingtian, who was flying in the air above the White Tiger Sanctum's estate, had also
Elder Lin
changed
and Elder
into the
Zhang
uniform
have made
of a
their
true
move.
disciple of
Meanwhile,
Zoroastrianism.
in the White
It was
Tiger
difficult
Sanctum's
for a
estate,
true disciple
a
to
group
not
of White
attract
Tiger
attention
Sanctum's
when he
disciples who
swaggered
had come
past
to
the
watch
White
the show
Tiger
recognized
Sanctum.
the two
Is that
silver
a true
flame
disciple
elders
of
of the White Tiger
Zoroastrianism?
Sanctum?
The
Who had
first people who
intercepted the
noticed
true
Duan
disciple.
Lingtian,
I'm afraid
were
this
some
true
White Tiger
disciple is in
Sanctum's
trouble.
disciples.
They were
right.
stunned when they
He's
saw a
flying
true
above our
disciple
White Tiger
barging into
Sanctum's
their White
estate.
Tiger Sanctum.
Even Lord Sanctum
Based on what
leaders
they
direct
knew,
disciple
there was a
wouldn't dare
rule
to
in
be so high
Zoroastrianism
profile.
that no Saint Land
Why do I
disciple,
find this true disciple
regardless of
familiar?
whether it was an elite
I find him
disciple or a
familiar
true
as well.
disciple, when the
Was
group
allowed
of White
to enter
Tiger
the four
Sanctum's
symbol
disciples
sanctums
arrived
without the
many
permission
of them
the
found
sanctum
Duan
leader.
Lingtian familiar
However,
as well.
a true disciple was currently
none of them
flying
could
past
recall
the
who
White
he
Tiger
was.
Sanctum,
Naturally,
as though no one
it was
was
only
around.
because they could not
Based
recall
on the
who he
direction the
was.
true disciple
Just when
was
the
heading,
two White Tiger
it was
Sanctum's
obvious he
elders
had
were
just
staring
returned
at
from
Duan Lingtian
Zoroastrianism.
fiercely,
Isn't
as though
he a
they
little
were
too
about to do
bold?
something to
This
him.
is the White Tiger
A shocked
Sanctum
voice
of the
suddenly
four
rang
symbol
in the air.
sanctums.
It's
I
not
remember
a place
him now.
where a true disciple like
He's
him
senior
can act
brother
as he
Duan
pleases.
Lingtian. The
Just
voice
wait
came
and
from
see.
one of the White
He'll be
Tiger
intercepted
Sanctum's
by our White
disciples.
Tiger
When
Sanctum's
this
silver
disciple
flame
looked
elder
at Duan
soon,
Lingtian
he'll be
again,
sent to the
his eyes were
enforcement hall.
filled with admiration.
He's provoking the entire
He's
White
senior
Tiger
brother Duan
Sanctum.
Lingtian.
Many White
It
Tiger
seems like he's
Sanctum's
senior brother
disciples were
Duan
indignant
Lingtian,
as they
He's
discussed
different
among
from the
themselves.
senior brother Duan Lingtian.
What if he's a direct
I saw a
disciple
few
of
years
Lord
ago.
Sanctum leader,
Currently,
or one
senior
of the
brother
elders in
Duan
White Tiger
Lingtian
Sanctum,
has restored
some
his
White Tiger
original
Sanctum's
appearance.
disciples said?
I've seen his face
Impossible.
in a portrait before.
Even if he's a direct
I've seen it
disciple
before
of
as
Lord
well.
Sanctum leader,
Moreover,
or any of
his
the
body
elders,
shape is no
he'll
different
try
from
his best
senior
to
brother
avoid our
Duan
White
Lingtian
Tiger
in the
Sanctum.
portrait.
It's
In the
impossible
past,
for him to
one
be
of the
so
four
arrogant.
great Karmapa of
However,
Zwanza Buddhism,
this person
the
doesn't
Golden
seem to
Lion
care
King,
about our White
Siekong
Tiger
Sun,
Sanctum at all.
had restored
This is a
Duan Lingtian's
provocation to our
appearance and
White
body
Tiger
shape in the
Sanctum.
portrait.
It's a
He had also
provocation to
spread
the
the
entire
portrait
four
to the people
symbol
of
sanctum.
Zoroastrianism.
Among the White
Almost
Tiger
everyone in
Sanctum's disciples,
Zoroastrianism,
there was
had
no
seen
lack
the
of
portrait
people
of
who were
Duan
eager to
Lingtian.
stir up trouble.
Previously,
Just as Duan
most of them did
Lingtian
not
was
realize
about to
it
leave
at
the White
first
Tiger
because their
Sanctum's
memories
estate
were a
and
little
enter the
blurry
Saint
after a
Land.
few years.
Humph.
Duan Lingtian,
Two angry
your
snorts
Duan
rang in
Lingtian.
the air as the sound
The
of
two
wind
White Tiger
whistling rang
Sanctum
in the
elders
air.
had naturally
Their target was
heard
Duan
the
Lingtian.
discussion among the
They
White
were getting
Tiger
closer
Sanctum's
and closer
disciple
to
Duan Lingtian.
When they looked at Duan Lingtian
Silver Flame
again,
Elder of the White
their
Tiger
expressions
Sanctum
were no longer
Duan
hostile.
Lingtian raised
Instead,
an eyebrow
they looked more
when he
solemn.
sensed the aura
At
of
this
the two
moment,
people.
they
who
recalled
caused
the
the portrait
portrait
they
they
had
had
seen a
breaking.
few years ago.
However,
The
he did
young
not
man
pay
in
any
the
attention
portrait
to them.
perfectly matched the
Instead,
person in front
he
of them.
continued to walk
What?
towards the direction
Elders,
of the holy
did you
land
see
of
someone
Zoroastrianism
impersonating me?
at a
When
speed
Duan
that was neither
Lingtian saw the
fast nor
solemn and
slow.
suspicious
The silver
expressions
flame
on the two
elders of
White Tiger Sanctum
Zoroastrianism
elders' faces,
were only at the
he
third
could
or
not
fourth
help but
form
shake his
of
head
the
and
saint
smile.
celestial stage.
Humph.
To him,
So
there
what
was
if you're
no threat
Duan
at all.
Lingtian?
Every
Stop.
clan has its
How
own
dare you?
rules. Two
Your
deafening
Duan
roars
Lingtian,
that
a
contain
true
monstrous
monstrous
fury
How can you
resounded at almost
disregard
the
the
same
rules
time and walk
the
in
two
the White
silver
Tiger
flame
Sanctum.
elders of the White
Today,
Tiger Sanctum
I'll send you to the
shouted at
enforcement
Duan
hall
Lingtian
and let
at the
them
same
deal
time.
with you.
Then,
One of the White
they
Tiger
arrived
Sanctum
near Duan
elders snorted
Lingtian
coldly
at the fastest
based on
speed
his words
and intercepted
it seemed
Duan
as though he was
Lingtian
going
from
to
the
arrest
front and
Duan
back.
Lingtian in just a blink
That's
of an
right.
eye. Even if
Duan
Duan
Lingtian
Lingtian
was
was
pincered
by
by
the
the
two
two
silver
silver
flame
flame
elders,
elders.
you
When
can't
Duan
disobey the rules
Lingtian
of
came
the
to a
sect.
halt,
Today,
his true appearance
you'll have
was
to go to
exposed
the
to the two
enforcement hall
silver
with
flame
us.
elders of
The
the
other
White
White
Tiger
Tiger
Sanctum.
Sanctum elder
They found
chimed
him
in.
familiar. Naturally, Duan Lingtian's current appearance was different from the one he disguised when he was in the Zoroastrianism a few years ago. Right now, he was showing others his original true face, without any disguise. The two silver flame elders of the White Tiger Sanctum found Duan Lingtian's appearance familiar, because they had seen Duan Lingtian's portrait before. For a moment, the atmosphere that had eased up was once again filled with the smell of gunpowder. The group of White Tiger Sanctum's disciples stared at Duan Lingtian intently. They were curious about how Duan Lingtian would react to the situation. Elders, if I'm not mistaken, the Zoroastrianism has a rule that states that Saint Land disciples are not allowed to enter the four symbol sanctums. Apart from that, there's another rule. Duan Lingtian looked at the two White Tiger Sanctum elders with a piercing gaze. If a Saint Land disciple possesses the ability to defeat any of the sanctum leaders in the four symbol sanctums, he'll be able to disregard the rule and walk freely in the four symbol sanctums. Without waiting for the two White Tiger Sanctum's elders to reply, Duan Lingtian continued to speak confidently. Duan Lingtian had learned about the Zoroastrianism rule in the past, so he clearly remembered the rule's additional rule. You. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the two White Tiger Sanctum elders' expressions changed drastically. An expression of shock and disbelief could be seen on their faces. In their hearts, the same absurd thought rose up in unison. Could it be that Duan Lingtian possessed the ability to defeat the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum? After all, the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum was a Golden Flame elder of Zoroastrianism. His cultivation base was at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage. Even among powerhouses at the fifth form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum could be considered as one of the best. The group of White Tiger Sanctum's disciples was shocked as well. All of them were dumbfounded. Does senior brother Duan Lingtian intend to challenge the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum? This was the same thought that appeared in their minds. If the White Tiger Sanctum really wants to settle the matter of me, Duan Lingtian, passing by the White Tiger Sanctum today, the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum can come out and fight me. If I lose, I'll personally go to the enforcement hall to receive my punishment. Duan Lingtian's voice resonated in the air again. His voice was loud and clear as well. Duan Lingtian's words clearly expressed his intention. Since the White Tiger Sanctum refuses to accept the fact that I, Duan Lingtian, am here today, I, Duan Lingtian, will challenge the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum. If the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum wins, I'll personally go to the enforcement hall to receive my punishment. If the Sanctum leader of White Tiger Sanctum loses, I'll naturally be able to move freely in the White Tiger Sanctum's estate without violating the Zoroastrianism rule. Duan Lingtian's words contained his Sun Saint origin. It did not take long before his words spread through the entire White Tiger Sanctum, shocking everyone in the White Tiger Sanctum. Duan Lingtian, senior brother Duan Lingtian has returned? Sect leader has only made the announcement a few days ago, and he's already back? Not only has he returned, but he seems to have passed by our White Tiger Sanctum as well. However, based on his words, it seems like he intends to challenge Lord Sanctum leader? It seems like he's been stopped by someone. I remember there's a clause in the rule. The remaining Silver Flame elders and Bronze Flame elders are not allowed to enter the Four Symbols Sanctums also made their way over to watch the commotion. As long as a Saint Land's while the White Tiger Sanctum was in an uproar because of any of the Four Symbols Sanctums, Duan Lingtian, he'll be able to ignore the rule challenge me and walk freely in the Four Symbols Sanctums. Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube brother Duan Lingtian, we're so grateful for your support to obtain the privilege to walk freely in the Four Symbols Sanctums on this incredible journey. As long as the White Tiger Sanctum's disciples were not in closed-door cultivation, donations truly makes down whatever they were doing and gathered in the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.